Hi there. All right, come on in. Good afternoon, everyone. How are you doing today? Hi, Christian.
Hi.
Hi, Sarah.
Hello, Deanna.
Hi, Robert. And Brissa and Jean and Carrie and my son. And you come. And Sarah, it's her first day. All right, let's let some people in. Hi, Sarah. Nice to meet you. Glad you can join us. So let me check in with Sarah for a little bit, you guys. Meanwhile, please go to the chat, everyone, and go ahead and do your little hello. So Sarah, hi. Were you able to get yourself set up a bit with applications one way or another?
I was able to access them through
VDI.
VDI.
Okay, perfect. So then as long as you're connected that way, did you get to sign in through Google?
I think so. Is that what we access through Pipeline or?
Yeah, no. You access Pipeline, then you sign in, and then you get into the Windows computer, I'm just trying to see where you're at, just to make sure. So
Okay.
what steps did you do?
I did this. I took the step where I was able to access an SBCC computer.
Okay.
And then
So let me share my screen for a minute. So did you get to kind of this place where you have this big blue window?
Yes.
That's the SBC computer. Okay. And then did you get a big thing saying sign into Google? Did that happen yet?
Yes.
And did you sign into that with your Pipeline email address?
Yes.
Okay, good. And then have you tried to open any? So I'm running through this just
No
and
worries.
then did you try to open any of the applications yet?
I tried to open Photoshop and that worked.
Okay, it worked, but did you get a request to sign in to Adobe Creative Cloud? Those are the three steps. Did you get that one yet? Like if you open Photoshop, when you say open new or file new and start to use it, it'll pop up with a big Creative Cloud sign in. It's your last one. That you need to do only once and never again. But so let's see if you get that. Let me just see where you're at. So one of the things that we do here is in class is that we're going to be sharing your screen like this every time that there's a question, because it's much faster for me to help you. So everyone here is really good at it. And since I want you to get comfy with it, I'm going to ask you to share your screen now. Are you a Mac or a PC person?
Mac.
Okay, so when you're a Mac person, sometimes you need to jump through some hoops with permissions. So you need to tell me what you see on your screen. First of all, go to the big old share screen button in the Zoom, the green share screen button. And once you're there, tell me what you're seeing. You're seeing a window with little choices?
Yeah, I can either choose to share desktop, whiteboard.
Okay, go ahead and say show desktop. Now, when you, at the bottom right of that window, you'll see another button that says share. When you hit that share button, either it'll share or it'll send you to go to your system preferences. So you read to me the message. Oh, it started sharing. Good. So no need to go to system preferences. Okay. So then, good. Oh, and Glenda is also joining us today for the first time, and she just arrived. So both Sarah and Glenda, I sent them all the background info. Okay, so let's see. Can you go into the browser that you are using for BDI? Hi, Glenda. I'm going to be with you in a minute because I know it's your first day and it's also Sarah's first day. So I'm helping Sarah first. Okay, so do you have the browser where you've connected to VDI yet available? There it is. Okay.
Oh, let's see.
I saw.
Can I unshare for just a moment?
Sure.
Right.
I'm going to stop your sharing. I've stopped your sharing. So
okay. I realize I have a lot of browsers open.
Yeah. One thing that I recommend everyone, and everyone else has heard it right now, but by the way, Sarah is new to us today, and so is Glenda. Both of them had registration stuff going on, but I've sent them all my information as much as I could. Hopefully they're kind of caught up with at least getting the the setup going, and then as soon as I'm done with them, you guys will get going with today. But while Sarah's checking in, Glenda,
Yes.
do you have the applications or did you connect to VDI?
I have been connecting to VDI. I'm not currently,
Okay,
but I was going through all of your instructions. I didn't actually get set up on
Okay.
pipeline until later this afternoon. So I was just kind of getting through all the
all right.
steps, but I
Okay,
did get into
so
VDI.
then we need you to get connected to VDI now. So I'm just checking in with Sarah. She's almost there. She just needs one more step, and then I'll have you share your screen. I hope you connect really quickly because everyone else
Okay.
by now is
Yes.
connected and ready to go. So Sarah, are you ready to? Oh, what I was about to say to anyone, both Sarah and Glenda, and what I just saw from Sarah's computer and everyone else, remember to close up everything else you can on your computer other than Zoom and the browser. And if you guys are using your own applications, of course, your applications, but if you're on VDI, your browser, because all of this takes a lot of power from your computer, a lot of, and so we need to make sure that you have enough oomph to make it all work. Here, like my technical words, oomph, you like that? All right, Sarah, ready to share again?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Oh, did that work? Or
yes, you're showing a black screen. Do you see a black screen?
yes. I'll see if I can. Oh, I think it's loading. Oh,
Oh, there it is. Okay, good. All right. So, and you said that you already had checked in, you had already signed into Google Drive. You remember seeing it. So go down to the Windows Start button at the bottom left and go ahead and open Bridge.
is it Adobe Bridge?
Yeah, Adobe
2021?
Bridge 2021. And then you'll be asked in a minute to sign into Creative Cloud. And then you're set and ready to go as long as you did the Google Drive. And then I'll help Glenda. Looks with you, Glenda. We might need to start a bit more from the beginning. So make sure you have your,
I just reduced my VDI.
there's a sign into Google Drive. Okay. So say sign in with browser. And then now put in your school email. So it's your username at pipeline.sbcc.edu. Pipeline.sbcc.edu. Then say next, and then it'll ask you something and you say, okay, hold on. Sign in at the bottom. And now you can close this window. From the top, close the whole thing from the right side. Cool. And now on the, this is like, okay, say okay to Google Drive is downloading your files. Now say close to this thing. Okay, and then there's one more window that's gonna, so over here, I'll help you get here in a second, but first let me help Glenn, and then when Glenda's here, I'll help you both get to the class files, okay? So let me catch up Glenda up to here, and then you both will get you the class files. So let me stop your share. And all right, so Glenda, you need to connect to VDI still, is what you said?
I'm partway through and the screen. Yeah. So should I share the
ahead and-
screen?
Yeah, are you Mac or PC person?
PC?
Okay, because when you share, it's a little bit different for me, so I need to,
Oh,
okay, so
okay.
go ahead and share your screen. Perfect. All right, so let's open whatever browser you're using to connect to VDI.
It open?
Okay, so say allow, okay, oh, so
Yeah,
you're
so I am.
there.
Yeah,
You're
so I'm this
there, okay.
far and then nothing else comes up.
Yeah, so can you move it, your window a teensy bit higher up so I can see
Oh,
the
sure.
bottom?
Yeah.
I need to see the bottom toolbar. Okay, so
Mhm.
now, in case you have, so if the whole time to Google, sign into Google didn't come in, go down, see where you see the big red X, don't click
No.
on the X, but you see a big in the
Mhm.
browser. Yeah, now move to the right and there's like a little upwards carrot, no, to the right.
Oh, yeah, for
Yeah,
the
click,
icon.
yeah, click
Mhm.
on that. Okay, and see that little, yeah, Google Drive
Yeah,
icon.
it's
Click
Google
on that.
Drive. Mhm.
Okay, so now sign into that. And again, here's your, okay, there you go. And now say sign in. All right, so this portion, this little bit of signing in has to be done each time. And then at the end of
Mhm.
class, I need to remember, because you guys remind me, some other people who are on VDI, please remind me to walk them through how to sign out, because I might forget that you two haven't done it yet, but you need to sign out in such a way that next time you sign in, this happens again, which is what you need. Go up to the top right on the gray bar on the X and get rid of this window.
Okay, and actually, this is the first
Yeah.
time when it said it was loading shared
Yeah.
files, because I've done this like 3 times.
Yeah.
And that has not shown up. So that's
Yeah,
good.
because
that
you
that-
needed to sign into Chrome. Okay.
yeah,
And
that
now
came
you
up.
need to go and grab Bridge, which is down at the bottom left, start file. Yeah, click on that and open Adobe Bridge. Oh, 1, 2, or 3. Yeah, there we go. And now you'll be in the same place that Sarah's in. So now this is for both Sarah and Glenda. And for anyone else out there who might
Okay.
still need help with getting to the class files, now I'm going to get you to the class files. So on the left side where it says favorites, up there where you say this PC and all that kind of stuff, click on this PC. So this is for both Sarah and Glenda and anyone else. So go down, yeah, this PC. All right. Now this, say close, because this is a, hello, you're new to Bridge, so this only happens
Oh,
once.
okay.
Yeah, and later for both of you guys, you're gonna have to sign into Creative Cloud once you open InDesign or Photoshop or one of those. But right now, you need the 4th icon from the top right says Google Drive. And the resolution on your screen was different, Sarah, so you might see it bigger, you might need to scroll around, but go ahead and double click on Google Drive. Yeah, double click on that. And that's the thing we just signed into. We just signed into Google Drive, and that's where all the class files are. So you have to go to the icon and double click a little bit higher up with your mouse. There we go, and double click right there. Perfect. Now here, double click on shared drives. Let me know, Sarah, if you're not there or if you don't find stuff, okay? And now double click on Digital Design Techniques. Okay, so this that we're getting to next is taking a few seconds until it pops in. These are the class files, and partly what you're going to see first is a lot of the handouts right now coming in first. And then when it all finishes popping in at the top, there you go. See that folder? Don't open it, but grab it and drag it to your left. You see how where you have all those words at the bottom of that list of pictures that says drag favorites here?
Mhm.
Click that folder and drag
Drag it on.
and let go. Perfect. So
Okay.
now you can click on that folder and you don't have to do all the searching anymore. The next time you open Bridge from now on, that'll always be there for you to just click on that now.
Perfect.
Go ahead and click and on download class files. Yeah, and that'll take us to the class files. The rest of what was there was handouts. I had everyone, I had requested everyone read a resolution handout that I'm gonna tell you about later, but for now, this is it. Where you're at is where everyone should be at the beginning of class. Did you make it here, Sarah? Okay, great. So the only thing left for both you and Sarah is that you need to sign into the Creative Cloud. So let's go open another application. So let's open, let's go open Photoshop. So go down to the, yeah, and then Adobe Photoshop, scroll a little bit, there we go. Click on Adobe Photoshop. And before you can get anything done, it'll probably say sign in to Creative Cloud and the whole thing. And so again, it's the entire username at pipeline.svc.edu. So whenever it pops in, go ahead and do that. And meanwhile, I'm going to stop your sharing because you guys are in the right spot. And Sarah, you seem to be nodding that you're in that same place. And now let me thank you, everyone else in class who has been sitting around waiting nicely and patiently. I just wanted to catch both of them up for a second here. Let me do one more thing here, which is I'm going to share with you guys the screen of the Padlet. So I'm not sure if either Glenda or Sarah got a chance, because I sent them an email. It was like, if you guys,
Yeah.
all the rest of you thought you got a long email, they got all that together with another one and another one. They got an email that was like this long, trying to catch them up to everything. So
I
I'm
did
not sure
get
if
in here.
you got to
Yeah.
the place where it said, this is how to get into Padlet. Okay. So this is, so I wanted to thank you guys for posting some of the stuff that we did last week. I just wanted to mention that Maysan had a request here, and this is a good place to put in things that you have questions about or things that you want to ask me about. Let Brissa, and there we go. So you said something, I would like to improve the text portion with some special effect. So Maysan, do you mind telling me first, and the reason I'm asking this, you guys, is the process that I want you always to go through when you are thinking of doing whatever you're doing. Hi, Brissa's little cutie face appearing instead of Brissa. All right, so I'm clicking on this, and the first thing you should always ask yourself is, what's the end process? Like, what's the end output that I want for this? Is it going to be for a photograph that you're going to print? Is it going to be part of an advertisement? Is it going to be for social media? Like, what is it? Because that makes a difference as to how to proceed with a request of how to improve the text portion with some special effects. So the main question I have is, oh, now there's two Sarahs. I see Sarah and Sarah. Sarah without an H and Sarah with an H. All right. So Maysan, what's the
it's just like
goal here?
For social media purpose.
Okay.
And it's not for print.
Okay. And you
Yeah.
know why this matters? And the reason I'm asking, I want you all to consider, I think we began to talk in one of the conversations, one of the handouts that I've asked you to read is the resolution handout. And one of the things you need to consider when you're going to design something is, where's it going to appear? It's very different if it's going to appear on a screen, if it's going to appear on a t-shirt, if it's going to appear on a business card, right? How you proceed with whatever you're going to do. So by saying that you want it to be in mainly social media, right? Then most people read social media on their phones. Some people, maybe some people might read them on a screen. Many people have laptops with small screens. And the reason I'm saying this is because how big or how prominent you make this font is going to be very different. So look at how small it is here, at least in my screen showing font. If it's going to be on a phone, this is probably how big, at least in my proportion. And again, this changes for every person here. We dealt with that last week. Every person has their own screen they're looking through, set it at their own resolution. So for some of you guys, this is showing up this big. For some, it's showing this big. Some are showing this big, depending on the screen resolution you're looking at it through. But for me, it's showing up, if I were to relate this to real life, about yay big, like 2.5 inches tall by 2 inches wide, maybe something like that. It's showing it for me, right? In my screen. And that would be probably that or a bit smaller. It would be how it would show up on my phone if I were using this in social media. So then, even if you make the special effect much more prominent or whatever it is that you want to write in here, it would be harder to read, and you'd have to maybe consider covering more of the bottom with this text, or maybe making a bar with like a background of a different color so the text is more readable. So you'd have to consider that, versus if it's going to be about yay big, which is maybe on an iPad or maybe on a small desktop, maybe on Facebook. Maybe this is almost too big for what it would show up on social media. So anyway, where, yes, we certainly want much more differentiation from the background in that case, but maybe the font size is not so bad if this is where it's going to show up, right? So you need to find some kind of in between. Now, the point here of what I'm trying to teach isn't so much about how to make this work or not, which we're going to get into what's the best place to accomplish this, but just reminding you how to think about things, okay? Like, where's this going to end up? What I call it the output. What's the output for this thing that we're doing? And a big part of this class is always considering, how do I even start my project based on where it's going to end? Okay. Is it going to be, what's it going to be? What's my goal for this piece? Right.
Okay.
So if you're going to make a brochure for your business, before you even start on the brochure, you want to decide, what are you trying to say in this brochure? Are you trying to sell your services or your location, or you're trying to get people to donate money? Like, always, what's the goal, right, for the information? And is it going to be a 3-page brochure, 1-page brochure, a little flyer that has 2 sides? Like, what's it going to be? And is it also going to go out on social media? So then you need to have 2 or 3 different outputs for the same thing. All right. So, okay. So once you know that, then we can begin to consider what we're going to do. So in this case, yeah, you can probably set this up. If it's going to be for social media, you can probably set this up in Photoshop and just export straight from Photoshop, right? So then how do we make text effects and stuff like that in Photoshop? So once we get into Photoshop, we can look at that. All right.
Okay.
Now, I have told people who in other of my classes, not so much in this one, I've told people to let me know in part if the photos that they put up here are just for me to see and talk about and give feedback, or you also would like to have it worked on. And if you want to have it worked on, I would want to ask you if I can share it with the entire class so that everyone has the file for us all to work on it and stuff like that. So let me know. But otherwise, just when we get into Photoshop, I'll work with text and show you what to do. So then you can apply it on your own to your image. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So just kind of reminding you a little bit the point of Padlet, which is, on the one hand, I need to see at the end of the day your work to see that you're progressing with the class. And another, which is what the rest of you guys have wrote, this whole nature, these other images or screenshots of what we did in class. And then the other request, like Mesan, is to put in questions that you have, things that help me move forward the class and give you ideas of what you're up to, that I can then help you with as we move forward with the class. And sometimes you might be working on a logo or something that you want feedback from me, and you can do that too. Or a poster or whatever you're working with. Okay. So in this case, she's working with this and she wants to make it work for social media. So I said, as long as it works inside of what I'm going to teach and you're okay with it, then I can incorporate it into the class. If it's something that's just that you want to work with and don't want me incorporating in class, then I can give you some feedback and you just use what you learn in class to work on it, and then post next week the result of what you did with that. Okay. And then we can keep moving.
It's okay. You can use it if you think that's a good picture.
If so, I'm going to see if there's something I can incorporate it into. But if so, you would have to send me the file, because this one already has the, it's a small JPEG and flattened text. So if you want that, if you want me to be able to work with it in class, which is not a bad idea, then go ahead and send me the file. Okay. And then I'll see how I can incorporate. Yeah, but right now, if I tried to use this, it already has text flattened onto it, and it's no good. I can't delete, like I need the actual file. All right, great. Cool. So I just wanted to show you guys that. Back to my VDI. Oh, I didn't open my bridge yet because I was showing. Okay, so last week we opened InDesign a little bit, and we saw, well, we opened all 3 programs, well, 4. We opened Bridge, InDesign, Photoshop, and Illustrator, and we did a whole bunch of work comparing all of the different sorry, I need to see something. I couldn't see anything, or just fingerprints on my glasses. Comparing the, here we go to DigitalDesignTechniques class. Let me click on that. Comparing the different programs and the workspaces and how they present. And remind me, you guys, Glenda and Sarah with an H, that, oh, by the way, both Glenda and Sarah and Brissa, who joined us last week, I need your last names added to your Zoom, because later there's a thing I download from Zoom, a report of who was here to do attendance, and it'll just say Sarah. And now that would be specifically confusing because I'll think it's Sarah's second computer or something. But even Glenda, because later I have to turn in all that paperwork, and then it gets sent to the state chancellor. Long story, for them to pay us back, they need to see who is here. So I need your last names to be the same ones that are on the roster. Okay. So how you do that, hover over the little window that has your video, and you'll see that there's 3 dots appear. You can click on those 3 dots and then rename yourself, and then just add your last name. The first name can be whatever you want to be called. That's more flexibility, but the last name has to be the one that's on the roster. Okay, so Brisa, for you too, although I think you have another connection. No, you have one connection. No, you have one connection. You have 2, and the one has all your name. Good. And then Natalia, it says Natalia S, so maybe put in your entire name. Now, I am seeing someone else who's showing up today that I haven't seen before. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Saigna? Are you there?
Sina, yes.
Hi, Saina. So
Hi.
I know, I haven't met you yet, right? You didn't come to
No.
class yet?
Oh, I've missed a couple, the classes.
Yeah, the first week. So I didn't, there's 2 other people who joined us today who I sent a lot of info for them to catch up. I
Okay.
did not know about you. So what's your situation? Do you have the applications? Do you know about VDI?
I do know. I've worked with all the programs a little bit, so I'm not like,
Okay, do you have them on your computer?
I do, yes.
Okay, good. So then if you're going to be using the applications that are on your computer, did you download the class files yet?
I have not downloaded the class files.
Okay, so you guys give me an extra 5 minutes. I'm just going to show you what to do, let you kind of do it behind the scenes while I start working, because everyone by now has this set up. But let me just show you. Go to a browser, any browser, and then write sbcc.edu. Oh,
Okay.
not comma edu .edu. And by the way, also for Glenda and Sarah and maybe Briss, I don't know how much of this we did. This is also how to get to the class handouts. You don't need to get to the class handouts through VDI. Okay, you can be on just a regular browser. So head over to Santa Barbara City College, and then here on the left side, click on Pipeline.
Okay.
Once you get to Pipeline, you'll be asked to sign in. So mine's already signed in. That's why it didn't ask me, but you'll have to use username and password. And then here, go over to the word student and choose student resources. And you guys can review this. I've sent you lots of videos saying how to do this, but you can review the beginning of this recording next time if you need to do this again. All right, and then here on the far right, you see Google Drive. Okay, and then here on the left side, you'll see shared drives. Okay, click on shared drives. And then over here, you will have a folder called Digital Design Techniques. Double click on that. All right, so here it is. These are the class files. These are the class handouts. We kind of, for VDI people, we kind of went through this already through Bridge, but you don't want to have to do all the Bridge thing when you're at home just needing to read a handout or to find out where the class link to the recording is or something like that. So this is how you get to it just from a regular browser without doing VDI. And the key thing here right now is I want you to click, don't open this folder. Go to this folder and right click and then say download.
Okay, down.
And it's going to download. It might ask you permission to download multiple files or something like that. Go ahead and say okay. Once it's finished downloading, it'll be in your computer's downloads folder. And then I'm going to ask you to open Bridge, and then we're going to go get your files through Bridge. Okay, just let me know when it's finished downloading, because it'll say zipping and stuff like that. It'll take a little bit to download. Meanwhile, here I have a file that I want everyone to know that is where I put the links for the class recordings. So it's called Zoom. So if you don't see this suggested on your page, then head over to the very bottom and the last one, because it starts letter Z, so it starts with Zoom. So it's there again. But Google does this thing that it puts the latest ones used up here. So go ahead and double click up here. If you ever want to watch the class recordings, here's week class 1 and 2 from last week. Then today, after this class is over, it takes many hours for it to process and YouTube to put the, how do you call it? The words underneath and all that, which we need to do for compliance for accessibility. So then basically by tomorrow morning, you'll find a link here. And if you find a link earlier, it might still not work. Like I put the link as soon as I upload the video, but it might take an extra few hours before the video is actually working. So usually by the next morning, you can click on the link here and you'll have the recording of that class. Now that said, that recording is the entire class. So the full 2.5 hours that we're together. So the best way to use the recordings is to have a notepad. And then when I say something that's really interesting or something you want to review, something that you say how to get to the handouts again, you look in and go, well, if class started at 5:30 and it's now 6, and she said this maybe 10 minutes ago. So to go about 20 minutes into the recording and you'll find the place where I talked about such and such thing, right? You kind of make yourself a note and then you scroll through that recording. The classes are all being recorded, by the way, which is something I need to tell at the beginning, everyone. But then this is a link that no one else has. Like you can't search for this class on it's a private link. So the only way to get to it is by getting this link, right? So only you guys who have access to this can get to it. All right, so there we go. So are your files downloaded now?
Not yet. I'm still going through the
You're still
process.
downloading. Okay, so when you're downloading, when you open Bridge, let me know. I'll help you find the files. All right. So everyone else, once again, thank you for the patience. I reached out to people who hadn't shown up last class and asked, hey, are you in class? And so I was hoping for some people to show up today, so I'm glad you all did. But what that means is that we need to move forward with the material we need to do for today. So I had asked you guys to, and I know that the 3 people who are showing up today here for the first time probably didn't have time to watch all the videos, but I'm going to proceed as if, and then stop me if you need me to catch you up or help you a little bit. The way I like to work is that the moment you're stuck, please tell me at that time, instead of waiting 10 minutes or 20 minutes to then be so far behind that I have to spend a whole bunch of time catching you up. Just in the moment, tell me, well, it's not working the way you're supposed to. And then if I can help you with a few words, that's good. And if not, you share your screen and go, oh, this is what's happening. And instantly maybe move forward with everyone. Sharing your screen is usually really the fastest way for everyone to move forward. And it also lets me get an idea of where you're at, where people are. So I'd like to see people's work and what they're doing. Okay. So don't hesitate in speaking your question because of the shared screen. Imagine that if I was in class and you say, hey, it's not working for me, I just walk over and I would just see the problem, point it out immediately and keep going with the class. And that's the idea of the shared screen. Okay.
Okay.
What's that?
I said, okay.
All right. And then the last thing that I want to say is that whenever I ask the whole class for something, so right now I want to get a gander again of who's on VDI and who's not. So the way I want everyone to answer is by using the, at the bottom of the screen, of the Zoom screen, you'll see that there's something called reactions, I believe, which is little smiley faces and stuff like that. So if you smile or give me thumbs up and all of that, that disappears in 3 seconds. So what I need you to do that doesn't disappear is use the check mark, the green check mark for a yes, the red X for a no. And then if you want to speak in the middle of something and you have a question that isn't a quick little, hey, but you actually want to ask something, then just raise your hand, which is that bottommost button of them all. Okay. And then you kind of pop up to the top and I know in order how to answer questions. So right now, if you have a VDI, please give me a yes, a green check mark. If you are on your own application, your own subscription, then give me a no. And I know, Thomas, that you were running into trouble. So, but you just said no. So are you on your CS5? Is that what you're doing right now? Okay, so, and you said that you had subscribed with your pipeline account using your email pipeline account. So that's really strange because he purchased it through the college buys.
Yes.
And he hasn't received information yet.
To my credit card, but I just haven't had any kind of anything further.
So it was charged to your credit card.
Yes.
So you do know that the process went through. And the only question would be whether you typed your email incorrectly, maybe. That's my only thing. But so did you receive a Any kind of email saying confirmation? Nothing?
Uh,
So guys, I think someone else here purchased a few days within this week, the applications through collegebuys.com.org. Was there anyone else here who did it? I know lots of people in the other two classes did it, Illustrator and InDesign. I just want to see what emails you got that he should have been getting. Because no one here? You all had it already? Okay, so then are you in my Illustrator or my Photoshop class, Thomas, or are you just in this one this time?
Just this one and
Just in
then
this?
one second summer session.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask in my other classes on Friday what series of emails they received the moment they bought it that you should have received. But I know you basically should have gotten an email and within the next 2 to 3 days max.
Yeah.
In your pipeline account with all the information. So maybe you need to go back to the page and see if there's like a help or something like that. Because it isn't Adobe. Adobe, this is a whole, it's a college buys thing that you need to go to and ask them.
So not Adobe and not Tech Help, but
Not
College
City
Buys.
College, no. Right now it's college buys that you purchase something from them or you're not getting something. My
Okay.
only
All right.
My only question is whether you typed in the correct email address and so they're sending information to the wrong. But what you can do then is with you got charged the credit card, so maybe you can talk to them and say, well, I did it this day and I got the charge, but I'm not getting anything, and see if they can trace the order that way. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I've never had I've had people with other kind of issues, but this has never been an issue. So
Oh, great. I love being unique.
you're unique, Thomas. Sorry. All right. Oh, Christian, you did purchase your college buys.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're answering me. Sometimes when I'm talking, it's hard to read also the email. So what you got, you'll get an email a day later, but he purchased this a few days ago already, or almost a week
Yeah,
ago,
it
right?
took a while. So I had the subscription, but then I canceled my original subscription and then repurchased through College Buys.
Yeah.
But it took like 5 days to get any kind of response from them.
Yeah.
So it was like 5 days. But Thomas, I can send, if you like, I can look through my emails from them to show you what I did receive finally.
Yeah, and you know why that might be helpful also, because maybe you have an email that says, if there's any problem, contact such and such number. You know how emails
Exactly.
have that, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you can do that. Now, I can't officially give you each other's emails, but
I'll post
if you
my
guys
email in the chat.
if
Yeah,
you
and I'll
guys
send
give
you a-
permission to each other, if you guys give each other permission to do it, that's fine. I can't connect you. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Christian. And let's see if we can get, and then Natalia says that you'll get it soon. So she also purchases. So that's good. Natalia, you wrote email proxy.id, request proxy ID. What's that? Okay. I don't
Hold
know.
on. So I was not sure when I'm gonna get my apps from
Yeah.
Adobe. So there was this screen with exactly that email proxy, whatever request. So
Oh,
I emailed them from my pipeline account and I asked, I just purchased blah, blah, blah. So, and they said, well, it take about 24 hours. And sure enough, I got, let's see.
okay.
So I
But
got an
that's
email from Adobe with a subject. Hold on, it says get started with all apps. And then there is a link there to, just
to the information. Okay, well, so
No.
Thomas, you can get in touch with Christian, but also there's an email there, request at proxy ID, that you might want to copy down. And it would seem be helpful too. So I want to keep going with the class, you guys. Thank you for all your help. And Thomas, if you go to the chat and put your mouse over the place where it says email proxy ID, you'll see that 3 little dots appear on the right of it, and you can copy and paste so that you can get that email that Natalia wrote there for you. All right. All right. Thank you guys for helping us troubleshoot. And it's the cheapest bar none place to get the applications, but yeah, it makes you jump through some hoops. But this was longer than I expected. So all right. Cool. So let's go ahead and if everyone has Bridge open, by the way, how do you pronounce your name? Sina?
It's Sina.
Sina. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the origin of the name?
It's a kind of a made up name. I get that question all the time, but
Well, I'm from Argentina, and whenever we see a GN, we want to say nya, like lasagna or something like that. So I'm trying to say Sina, and it's like, ooh, two I's, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
Sina. So I should just ignore the G. Okay. I
Yes.
want to respect people's way of saying names as much as I tell you I'm Diana instead of Diana. And then if you forget, that's fine. But it's just because I'm from Argentina, I say it in Spanish. So I try to get names
yeah.
correct if possible. Anyway, oh look,
Cool.
there's some information there, Natalia, about the support link from College By. Okay, you guys keep an eye on chat. You guys keep giving each other support on that. And now I'll continue with the class. All right, so let me put a spotlight on my mouse. That way you guys can see a little bit better. Here we go. So now I had you guys, did I have everyone open Photoshop yet or not? Because one thing I want to remind you, and this is what we did in class last week, we reviewed a lot of formats of different class files and file formats and stuff like that. But one thing I taught everyone is that through Bridge is an Adobe application that lets you access the photos, and it knows what place certain things have to open into. So I want you all to open this this file here called Farm Square. And if you look at the extensions, we have PSDs, Photoshop documents, JPEG, stuff like that. But then this one here is a .tif, a TIFF file, Farm Square .skiff, .tif. Adobe, when you double click here on whatever it is that you have on a video file, it'll open Premiere. It'll open whatever's appropriate to edit that image in. So TIFF is one of the files that you would edit in Photoshop. It's again, who remembers what are the names that I gave any file that can be processed in Photoshop? What was the name I gave them? Remember I gave you two possible names for that?
JPEG, right?
Yes, but beyond JPEG, the type of files, and let me just give you the counterpart, is that
PSD,
Faster.
PSD and TIFF.
No, someone said the word raster. Who
Raster.
said that?
Raster.
Yes, Jean. Raster or pixel, right? Pixel-based files or raster files are the kind of files that you would work with in Photoshop, which includes what Joan was saying, what Kristen was saying, EP, you know, well, it's almost an EPS, that's a vector file. So Illustrator does vector files, and then Photoshop does raster or pixel-based files. And so TIFF is a raster file. So when we are ready to open it, it's going to open in Photoshop. And in fact, if Photoshop is closed, it's going to kick Photoshop open in order to have you see it. But here, before we double click on it to open it, just by simply selecting it, you can see a little preview here, which might be big enough or not. But if you want to see it bigger, you can also hold down your space bar and it's gonna show up a little bit bigger. Now, this is not opening the file. It's not open in any of the Adobe applications. It's just a bigger preview of the file in case you want to check and see if it's the right one. Maybe you want the one where the flowers are blooming and it was too small to see versus the one where the clouds are gray, who knows. Mainly when you have a group photo, you can see, oh, I want the one where everyone's smiling versus this one. And so this is a good way to see things bigger. If on top of that, you go to your space, to your keyboard and keep clicking on the key that has the arrows. Once you've hit the first spacebar again to go down. But if you hit the spacebar again to be up, you can go left or right and still see the other images that are here just by using your arrow keys. Okay, so to navigate up or down amongst all the different images that we have here. Okay, and then when you're done and you hit your spacebar, so right now I ended up on this kettle picture. If I hit my spacebar, then my kettle picture is the one that's going to be selected because I ended up in that one when I hit my spacebar again. Okay, now I'm gonna hit spacebar again, and I'm gonna go ahead and like go up with my arrow and then just move up to a couple of different ones. And then when I'm done, I'll hit the spacebar and then I'm down again. Okay, so that kind of how to navigate to see things a little bit bigger. You can also see things bigger by going down to this place here where there's these arrows and moving up or down. to see things a little bit bigger over there. I normally like to basically see all my files or most of my files in this way. And then when I really want to see them bigger, just click and hit spacebar to see if it's the one where everyone's smiling and the hair is in the right place and whatever it might be. All right, so that's how we move a little bit inside of Bridge. Also, once you select an image, you have all the metadata. So remember, I talked a little bit about metadata last week in this class, and I said that I wanted you guys to read the resolution handout so that you could understand a little bit more, which, by the way, let me switch for a second to the handouts that are the class handouts. And for those of you who just joined us, please make a point between here and Thursday. I'm going to speak maybe not so generously about resolution yet, because 3 of you guys have just joined us, and I'm going to give you time between here. Everyone had a whole week, but you guys will have 2 days until Thursday to read at the very least this handout, the one called New Pixels Image Size. I'm going to double click on it. You can download it if you want to print it, read it out loud, read it from here. You double click, open it. So it's about 13 pages, okay? But it's a lot of images, so it's not like really 13 dense pages. Now, for those of you who did already read that one, or in case you had forgotten that that was homework from today, please read it. But if you've already read that one, and since you're going to wait a couple more days to really use this information, then consider that you might want to also read how to resize images for email, which is right here, and or how to resize images for print. That's a good one too. And then also image resolution and print quality. They're all related. I'm going to be teaching this but when you guys have read all these handouts, you'll have much more information in the background. If you don't understand it, that's fine. Ask me, and I'm the one who's really in charge of teaching you this. But it also helps when you don't start from zero with this information. I spent quite a bit the first few classes talking about the difference between Photoshop and Illustrator. And so if you guys want to come in and read this one, it talks a little bit about the question I just asked about raster and vector files and stuff, so you can read that too. All right. I spend a lot of time using shortcuts in all of these classes, and you notice that I have an Illustrator and a Photoshop shortcuts here. The InDesign shortcuts are very similar to Illustrator shortcuts, so that kind of works for both of them. So if at all I'll be saying what the shortcuts are all the time, you guys can practice them. But if you're not with me and you want to remember them, you can these are just single page files. You can just print out just one of these and have it next to your keyboard to be reminded when you're working on your own about the shortcuts. Okay. And then, all right. So this is the homework for everyone who joined us today for Thursday. And then I can launch much deeper into the conversation about resolution. There's other quick guides. It's just other stuff that's here that we're going to use at different points. But also a reminder that here you have the link to the Padlet in case you forget how to access Padlet, which normally I put it in the chat. So let me put it in the chat again. Usually when I show it, the first thing is I put it in the chat so people can see it at the same time as me. But anyway, there's a link to the Padlet, but if it's in between week and you need to post something, here's the link again. All right. I also have this one that I showed last week, which is all about, and I asked you to watch, which is PNG versus JPEG versus PDF and TIFF, what format's best, just information about file formats. So we've already begun talking about all of that, but here you have some more files to help support that knowledge. Okay, so back to the applications. So this metadata, I'm gonna keep kind of not talking about it too much today while I wait for everyone to catch up with the information, but the resolution information that you guys are gonna learn about is gonna really matter very much when you decide what image am I gonna use for my project that I've got. So how many pixels it has based on, and what resolution and what size I can print it and all that will become important. So just as a quick little show, if I look at this image, I see that it says 1500 by 2100. That's the number of pixels that this image has. And if I click on this next one, it says 1200 by 1200. This one, on the other hand, says 500 by 500. Okay. This is also a very low resolution, 1200 by 800. So whatever information is here is going to inform us with whether this is an image that's going to work for my whatever output I'm interested in showing. Can I ask if is any one of you guys who are here today actively in my Photoshop class right now? No, right? Okay, yeah, because I'm teaching Photoshop and Illustrator right now too on Fridays, but I just want to make sure that it's not at the same, or depending on what time it is. Okay. So this last one that I just clicked on the other hand, says 3,500 by 2,600. So many, many more pixels than the others, right? And then that's this one here is a PSD file. So PSD files mean that it is already has been opened from wherever it came from. It has been created as an image and has been saved in Photoshop as a Photoshop file. So when you click from your phone or from your camera, 99% of the times you get a JPEG file. That JPEG file gets opened in Photoshop, and then as soon as you add layers to it, you can't save it as a JPEG anymore. So then the typical thing to do is to save it as a PSD. Alternately, the other thing you could do is save it as a TIFF. Okay, now let's go ahead and open this one down here, the layers sample.psd. And now that we really want to open it, how do we need to do that other than viewing it here is actually double clicking on it. So I'm going to double click on this one. And if I haven't yet, then it's going to kick open the Photoshop. If I haven't yet opened Photoshop, it's opening Photoshop. This is the point where maybe Sarah and Glenda and Sina, well, Sina, you said you own the applications. You are going to have to sign into Creative Cloud. You'll be requested if you finally just open Photoshop right now. Well, you had opened it before. At some point, you're going to get a request. Did you already get the request to sign in to Creative Cloud? Not yet. It'll probably show up now that we're actually opening a file. All right. So,
I have a question.
Yeah.
Mine says that what would you like to do, because there's an embedded color profile.
Yeah.
Use
So
the embedded profile.
Yeah. So give me a second.
Sorry.
When you first open the files, if you're a VDI, you probably won't get that request. But if you are at home, meaning at home, we're all at home or offices or whatever. But when I say at home, I mean you have your own subscription like Joni. And when I say at school, I kind of mean people on VDI. Okay. So if you're all sitting wherever you're sitting, but your applications are at school or your applications are your own. So depending on what color profile or color settings that you have on your computer, when you open a file that is in a different color setting, then you'll get the message. Can you reread that message, Joan, so people can hear it?
The document,
The message that you
.psd has an embedded color profile that does not match the current RGB working space.
Mhm.
And then it says the embedded, what it is and working. And it says, what would you like to do?
Yeah.
One, use the
Yeah.
embedded profile instead of the working space.
Mhm.
Two, convert documents color to the working space, or discard the embedded profile and in parentheses, don't color manage.
Okay, so basically, and the reason I had her read this out, because depending on where you're at, you might get it or not, but this is an important message. And what it means is that your Photoshop is set up to a color profile different than the one that's being opened up, which color is a big deal when it comes to this kind of digital imaging, understanding colors and color profiles. We won't get to the point where you're completely clear with that, because you can take a full on, 40-hour class and still have questions about color as far as it comes to issues with color matching and stuff. I'm going to do my best to teach you some of it, but basically the best thing to do in this situation where we're just playing and practicing, and just say don't change anything, right? So I don't remember which of those choices it was. It's like let it be whatever it is, but so I don't know which of the 1, 2, or 3 choices you were given there is Joan. Okay, 1. So don't change anything. But the important thing is understanding which color profiles work best for how you are trying, for what you're end product is, okay? So I remember from what it seemed that you were you're an RGB color profile, and this, it seems, isn't in a different one. So we're gonna learn more about this in the future. For now, just say okay to leave it be. But just so you know, the same colors that some of you are seeing on screen are going to be different than the ones that you're seeing, that other person is seeing on screen. Have you ever, remember when you go to a store that sells TVs or monitors and every screen is showing the same image, the same movie, and everyone shows it in a different color? I don't know if you guys have had that experience, but that's the same thing that's happening right now with our monitors. So the purple I'm seeing is different than the purple that you guys are seeing, depending on how well color calibrated your screen is, which you might or not have it color calibrated. And we're going to talk a bit more about that in this session. But if you are doing this seriously, like this is something you want to do as a profession, or for a real book that you're going to print, it's just for you, it's not a profession, but it's your art that you're trying to, something that really matters, then you should consider getting a color, get your color calibrated, get your screen color calibrated. So this here that I just show you is one example of a color I have 2 or 3 different ones here, the color calibration equipment. And these things are not cheap, okay? But, which is why I'm saying you need to be serious about this, in the sense that I can tell you more about it for people who are really serious about wanting to color calibrate. When do you need it? When what you see is something that needs to come out. The final output has to be identical. So say that you are taking photos of someone's artwork, and your artwork is subjective, right? And yet you present it to someone else, they might still think it's awesome, even if the purple is a bit more reddish or less reddish, it depends. But if you're trying to sell a t-shirt and you sell a t-shirt that's blue, and yet when it arrives at home, it's actually purple because the screen was off, then you're getting into real trouble, right? So the most you can do is correct your own screen to the best of your ability. And that's why you have these kind of equipments. And then make sure that what you are seeing is as good as it can be. And then you have some control over whatever's going to be printed. Remember what I just said, printed. So if I want to print this as a brochure, print this as a book, print this as a t-shirt, as a flyer, I will have some control over that, as long as I have my screen color calibrated, and as long as I have, you know, the right color profiles and all this conversation that we're going to have. But where you will never have control of is if that material is put online. So if your image is going to go to someone's website, to social media, to be part of an advertisement, as long as it's going to be seen on screen, all you can do is do your very best to make yours be okay. And then the rest is going to be, you have to completely give up control, because people are going to look at their stuff on their phones, on their iPads, on their desktops, on their monitors, and they will have their own screens showing them whatever they're showing them, and you will never be able to control that. Okay. So if the t-shirt you bought on Amazon isn't the t-shirt you saw, is it their fault or is it your screen? I don't know, but you know, do your best to have your screen as calibrated as you can, but you can't control what screen, their viewport, so to say, what they're viewing, but you can control how something is going to be printed. That you do have control over, as long as you calibrate your screen. So yes, Christian, your hand is up.
Sorry, unmuting. So does that differ from, would you use that in tandem with your calibration on your monitor? Is it?
This is a monitor calibrator.
Yeah.
This is a monitor calibrator.
So it's outside of what you do when you're asked to calibrate your color on your monitor. I'm looking at 2 different screens. I have an older, a 3-year-old Mac iMac
Mhm.
desktop, 20 inches. I
Yeah.
have a new MacBook Pro, which is amazing. The two images are completely different. And
Mhm.
I've known, I mean, I've seen differences like this, but I have never seen the MacBook Pro, this new MacBook Pro,
Yeah.
is showing the water droplets, tiny, tiny water droplets, which I cannot even see on this purple, on the,
That's different than color. That's resolution. So
Right,
your
exactly. And the
new
colors are
MacBook,
different
yeah,
too.
your new
Yeah.
new MacBook Pro is high res. It's called Retina screen, and it's showing you highly defined details versus your old one is probably not a high res screen.
right.
And so things are looking, you never noticed that they were fuzzy, except for when you see the non-fuzzy one and
God.
you go, oh my God, what a difference. Yeah. So
It's
that's,
just like putting
Mhm.
glasses on.
I have three screens in front of me. The way I work, I have three screens, right? And it's one computer, but I have it projected onto three screens. And
Yeah.
my screen here on the right is an old Mac computer screen. On the left, I have a nicely color calibrated, pretty professional-ish screen from before the Retina era.
Yeah.
And then here I have a Retina screen. And I'm telling you, no matter how much I calibrate all three, I do my best, but I basically ignore my old Mac. It just works
Yeah.
for my tools and my web browsing and that kind of stuff. But these two I try to have as best as possible. But the resolution on this one is very different than the resolution on this one. So even myself, if I print something, I have no control of how, or very little control of how I see it. Imagine the rest of the world, right? So the best you can do is calibrate your screen for print, like compare it to, there's a whole process to that, and we can talk a little bit more about that, but I can send you to some resources about this information.
That would be great.
Because I can't, there's nothing, I can't really teach you enough about it. Each one of you guys have your own equipment, your own material, your own resources, your own need and interest, because you might be like, hey, no, this is good enough for me, for my needs. And other ones of you are really trying to make a business out of this. And so you're going to spend more time on this. But this conversation then goes a little bit in hand with Joan's question about color profiles and embedded color profiles. So that we're going to tackle a bit more. But how your screen looks, this, and I got it on a huge sale. This was about $350. It was like $100 off or something like that, because they were having some kind of special. But that's about what you should consider. You should be paying for color calibration equipment for it to be useful enough. And then from there on, it just becomes much more expensive. So it's not cheap. So consider that unless you're going to be printing things where you're paying a lot of money, like I used to do a lot of color coffee table books, and we used to print those in China. And you do everything you can, you do all your work, and then you send the file, and then they have to send you color proofs back, and it's this big process, right? And you check against color and all that. But the best you can do is start with a calibrated monitor. All right.
Thank you.
I have one more
Send
question.
me an email and I'll send you a link to some information about color calibrators.
Okay.
Yeah. What's the question? Someone spoke.
Yes, me again. So since I know that sRGB is smaller than Adobe RGB,
Mhm.
and I would want to use it later on, would I convert it then?
No, we're going to talk about color profiles a bit later, but sRGB is a good color profile to be in, especially because that's the color profile of the internet. So especially if you, and I know that you talked about having doing advertising and marketing for a whole bunch of companies, right?
No, but
I know
anyway.
it wasn't you. Who was the person who?
That was me. But
That's you, Christian. Okay. Sorry, I just needed to. By the way, people who just joined us today, I need to get your surveys and your information so I have a bit more of an idea of what you're up to and what you're doing. So yeah, so sRGB is a pretty good place to be for anything that's going to be then published on screen. And the problem of Adobe RGB and others is that they might have a wider spectrum, but they're not reproducible outside of your screen. So let me show you guys what I'm talking about here in the handouts. No, not in the handouts, in the class files. I have a couple of information about color gamuts and CMYK and RGB and stuff like that. So this is a little bit what the conversation that I wasn't going to have today, but hey, sometimes you need to go a little bit with what's happening. So let me go over here and in Photoshop, let's go back to, this is where we are. Go back to in Bridge, and in Bridge, you'll see these 3 files right next to each other: demo, color gamuts, CMYK, and RGB. So I was going to spend more time with resolution, and since I'm going to wait for everyone to have read the handouts, this is not a bad segue. Let's go ahead and open all 3 of these, but I'm going to take advantage of this moment to teach you one extra thing. So if I were to double click on this file and this file and this file, they would each open individually in Photoshop. So I would have 3 separate files in Photoshop right now. Okay. Now I am going to compare all 3 right now. And this one here says that the metadata, I'm going to compare the metadata. And here it tells me that 600 pixels by 591, basically about 600 pixels square. I click on this one, very similar, if not identical. And then I click on this one, very similar, if not identical. So what this means that these 3 files are similar, in this case, identical in size enough that I can open them all in one file as 3 different layers. So let's go back to Photoshop. And I showed people this a lot last class, but how to move between Bridge and Photoshop instead of like grabbing something and moving sideways and trying to grab something else. Just have your applications completely maximized. So here, if Photoshop is kind of like this and Bridge is like this, and then you have one on top of the other, it's really complicated to distinguish. And then we're going to open InDesign and Illustrator. So for the people who just joined us, please make sure to grab your applications and maximize by clicking on this little window that's on the middle next to the X, and maximize the first one. And then use your taskbar down here, which for Mac people, it's equivalent to the dock on the PC, and to open the next one, and then go again and maximize that one as well. So now both of them are filling your screen, and then you go back and forth like this through them. So let's come back here for a second. And what I'm going to show you, what we're going to do with those color files is the following. Instead of opening it as 3 separate files, we're going to open it as one file with 3 separate layers, which is equivalent to what we have here. So if you head down here on the bottom right, oh, again, for people who just joined us today, I need you to make sure that that you go to this little icon on the far right. And Sina, are you in a Mac or a PC? I don't remember.
I'm on a Mac.
On a Mac. Okay, so on the Mac, it shows, it's still up here, but it shows a little bit differently. There's this little, because you don't have these on the Mac, you have a little window, a little icon that says choose a workspace when you hover over it. And when you click on it, it's a little rectangle and it shows you different workspaces. And I'm going to go ahead and switch to the Essentials workspace for this class. So whatever you're in, and then after you choose Essentials, go back to Reset Essentials. And that way we all are starting with the same exact workspace, which means we have the same tools on hand. There's other stuff that we're going to be changing, but I want everyone to be on the same workspace. So down here at the bottom, if you did that, you should all see the layers here. And this is a file that has multiple layers already. And how we see each one of these layers is because we have these little eyeballs turned on. And if I were to click on this little eyeball, I would just stop seeing the purple layer. Click on this one, I stop seeing the yellow. Click on this one, I stop seeing the green, and I'm left with the background. And if I click on this eyeball to stop seeing the background, I'm left with what is for Adobe transparency. This is Adobe's equivalent of nothingness. Okay, so there's just nothing there. And every time in any of the Adobe programs, you see this little gray, black and white checkered screen, that means transparency or nothing. So now if I go and turn on again the purple, you'll see it's floating because it didn't have anything else around it. And if I am in the basic tool you should always be in to start is the move tool, which is this guy right there at the top, which the shortcut to get to the move tool is hold the V key on your keyboard in case you were somewhere else, and then you can move it around. And so this is a floating element and a layer with no background, right? So I'm going to go ahead and click and just drag my mouse down to turn them all up again, or click and drag up to turn them all out all at the same time. So that's a quick way. Or you can also just hold down the Option key and click on only one of these, Option or Alt key, and then it leaves only one on. So say I want to look at only the yellow one, I hold down the Option or Alt key and I click on the eyeball of the yellow one and it turns everything else on. And I'm ready to see everything again with Option or Alt key clicked on. I click on this eyeball and I see them all again. So that's just a quick way, or just click and drag your mouse like that and you turn them all off and you turn them on. Just different things to get to handle your layers. Another thing about these layers, and we're going to spend a bit more time with layers, but I want us to open the other file, is that they are stacked in a certain order, and that you can restack that order. You can shuffle that order by moving, for example, the purple down. When I see that blue line appear between yellow and purple, I let go. And now I've moved the purple to be underneath the yellow. Or I can drag it all the way under here, and now it's under the green one as well. And if I move it around, now I'm moving it around behind the green level. Now, the only thing you don't want to do is drag it behind the background, because the background is solid. And so basically it's not that I can't see it, but it's the equivalent of putting a big thing on top of a small thing, and you're not seeing it, right? Because it's now got no way for me to see it. I've got something behind it, and that's what's happening here. So be aware that when you have a solid element that fills the entire screen, such as this background, anything you put behind it won't be visible. It's there. If I turn off this eyeball, there it is. But this background is hiding it. So now I'm going to drag it and put it up on top again to leave it there. So there's more that we're going to explore with layers. But what I'm saying is that we're going to go ahead and go back to Bridge and open these three files, the three color files, as one file with three different layers. And each one of these is going to be their own layer. So what we're going to do is we're going to select all three of these guys. And in case you've never done that, notice that when you select one, the other one stops being selected. And the way to select all these at once, and this is going to happen 100 times in not only in Photoshop and InDesign and Illustrator, whenever you want to select more than one thing across the world of computerdom, you hold down your Shift key, select the first one, hold down your Shift key, and then go select the last one. And you'll see that all three got selected. So this is just one of those like shortcuts that works across everything you can imagine on the world of computers. So once again, click on one of them and then hold down your Shift key and then click on the last one, kind of like bookends, and anything in between gets selected. So once all three of these are selected, let's go ahead and do a right click. Actually, no, we're not going to do a right click. Select all three and let's head over to Tools. And then Photoshop. And then load files into Photoshop layers. So once again, select one, hold down the Shift, select the last one, get all three selected at the same time. Here I'm seeing all three being previewed. Then I go up to Tools, Photoshop, and load files into Photoshop layers. So I'm going to sit there for a minute, make sure everyone's got it, that you can see where to go. You'll see that there's a bunch of other good stuff here that, okay, I'm going to click on it now for it to happen. And now I have one file and it's processing, and each one of the different files is coming in as a different layer. So we end up with one file with three separate layers straight from Bridge. And it's just a cute little trick, but it saves you from having to copy paste many times when you're trying to do composites. Brissa, you're saying, what's the name of that thing? Oh, this, are you talking, this is the only thing I showed, so I'm assuming you mean this, that your question is about. This is a color calibration measurement, color calibrator, it's called. This one in particular, Data Color Spider X Elite. I can send you that info later, but okay. So does everyone have all three of these guys opened up as a let me clear your hand. Okay, so just looking at it, it looks like I have a good combination. I'm going to clear everyone's feedback. And now give me I'm going to clear your feedback again because I left it. So if all is good, you can give me a yes or nothing. But what I do want is for you to say no if you're not here, if something got stopped, if you're trying to open the 3 files and you can't, or something like that. Saina, what happened with you and Bridge and the class files? Are you there? You said yes, so I guess you're fine.
Yes, I'm there.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure you got caught up. All right, so cool. Thank you. Glenda, let me just say that when you guys do any of the little emoticons, they're fun. Thank you. When you laugh at my jokes, when you clap and stuff like that. But if you want to call my attention and you're intending to like ask a question, remember the raised hand stays raised versus the clapping or the toots and horns and all that stuff just lasts 3 seconds and disappears. Just letting you all know. But I managed to say it. All right. So here we go. We have 3 different files. And remember, the other thing that I've been practicing the last couple of days is to zoom in and out. So who remembers how to zoom in and out to see this bigger or smaller? What's the shortcut?
Control-0.
Controller command. If you're on a Mac, it's command. If you're on a PC, it's control. But please hear me clearly. Those of you who are on VDI, even if you are on Mac computers, VDI is Windows. So whenever I say shortcuts for Mac or for PC, you guys are PCs, okay? So you have to use the control key. This is the only difference between Mac and PCs, and all of the Adobe programs is where the command or control. I know. So if you're on VDI, and no matter that you're on a Mac computer, you need to use the control key as your shortcut. So control plus or control minus. Okay, so I'm going to do control plus to get this a little bit bigger, or control minus to get it smaller. So I just hold down the control key, keep it held down, and then tap, 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 tap the plus, tap, 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 tap the minus. Okay, and then if you want to see something fill the screen, who remembers a shortcut for filling your screen?
Control-0.
Control-0. So Control-0 fills your screen. And this is the same for all the applications you're going to open. So all of this is the kind of stuff that you have in that little shortcuts, but they're common to all programs. Control-0 fills your screen. Now, in my case, when I fill my screen, down here at the bottom left, what's it saying? It's saying about 313%, right? See down here at the very corner. So you got to look and see what it says there when you fill your screen, which is Control-0. You will have a percentage that'll be very different than mine, and it'll be completely dependent on the resolution of your screen. So for some of you guys, you have 500%. For some of you guys, you have 170%, depending on the resolution of your screen. So the important thing is that if I am looking at this and anything other than 100%, if you have a Retina screen, so the ones that we were just talking about right now with Christian and I do, then 200% still works. But other than that, anything bigger than that, it begins to get pixelated. So these are supposed to be straight lines, but see how they're pixelated? And we did some of this work last week. The more I zoom in, what I can discover is that in Photoshop, you cannot have straight lines, right? Because anything that should be a straight line is really made out of pixels. So keep zooming in. And as you keep zooming in, and now I'm holding, what am I doing to scooch around? Who remembers what shortcut I'm using right now to do this, to scooch around the image?
The space bar.
Yes, hold down the space bar and you get the little hand that lets you scooch around the image. And then as I keep going control plus, I'm discovering that all of this is actually in pixels. So this makes this very unreliable place to make text or straight lines. Because however straight you can make a line, it's not really going to be straight. So in Photoshop, you cannot get good straight lines the way we could. So if we want straight lines, we need to be using or a straight text. We're going to talk a little bit about text and what it needs to do, but you should be using applications other than Photoshop. Now, there is a way to use text in Photoshop. It's about how you save the file, but for the most part, text in Photoshop is going to be otherwise written in pixels, just like this RGB is, which in the end is really not that good quality. So if I hit Control-0 again, I fill my screen again. And in my case, since I'm above 100 or 200%, I am already seeing the pixels. If I want to go to 100%, what's the shortcut for that?
Control 1.
And one.
Control or Command 1. That takes me to 100%. This is the only way I can see whether this image is good and sharp and in good shape. And yet, right now, for me, this is a bit too small for me to see the image well. But notice how everything looks really sharp right now. Okay, that's because at 100% is where you're going to really see how things go. But anyway, let's spend a few minutes. Let's turn the eyeballs off of this top one. And I don't know if your things came out in the same order as mine, but let's turn them all off. So I'm not going to say top or bottom. Let's turn all the eyeballs on that have these white backgrounds, and let's see only the one that has the black background, which is equivalent to the one that's called color wheel RGB. And I'm filling my screen. And what RGB is the kind of way to show colors that we're going to be using when you are using a monitor or a screen. Now, when I say a screen, I mean phones, iPads, smartwatches, if you have one, monitors, of course, desktop laptops, including things like movie theaters or, projection screens. All of that uses light as the way to create color. And so if you have light, and you would have to consider this, I don't know if you ever, I saw this experiment done once when my kids were small in science class, and I thought it was fascinating. There's these flashlights that are color pure, and in a dark room, if you have a beam of red light, a beam of green light connecting, then the combination of those two colors of light form yellow, and red and blue together form magenta, and blue and green form cyan. But when all three come together, you get white light. So this little intersection of all three, if you connect all three beams, you get white light. So any color created on a screen, this that we're looking at right now, me talking, the screen that you're seeing has been created with a combination of just those three colors of light. And you can get millions of colors out of it. But the range of light that you're going to see is different than when you are going to print something. Okay, so here we have a printed brochure, and let's turn on. Oh, and by the way, see how it says RGB is additive? Because again, as you add different colors of light, you get the different tones. Now, let me just a little bit more. So this is pure red and pure green in the same proportions, you get yellow. All of these light in the same proportions, you get magenta, cyan, and then when all three in the same proportion, you get white. But say that you get less blue, more red, less green, that's when you start getting all the variations of tones. So you get deeper purple, lighter purple, pink, green. So every other million of color depends on what percentage of blue, what percentage of red, or percentage of green that you're putting in your light to give you all the other tones and colors that we know exist in an image. And that's why we call it additive. Take away light and you've got black. Okay, so black in screen would be the equivalent of no light, and white on a screen would be the equivalent of all the light together, all of it at 100%. Okay, so any variation in between is all the other colors that we find. Let's turn on the eyeball on CMYK. CMYK is actually subtractive, and it's anything that we're going to print. If it's going to be printed, you're going to be using inks. Inks put together are going to give us the richness of all of this material that I have here. And it's just going to be most of the time, 99% of the time that we print, we're going to be printing with cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So CMYK, C for cyan, and for magenta, Y for yellow, and for some reason K for black. So cyan, magenta, yellow, and black are what we call CMYK, and that's what we use when we're going to go to print. Now, cyan ink mixed with magenta ink gives me blue. Notice what we said about additive. When you combine these colors, you end up with something lighter and then even lighter still. When you combine inks, you end up usually with something darker. So magenta and yellow give you red, cyan and yellow give you green. This is something a bit more we're accustomed to for those of ones who painted at, at school, but you get yellow and blue put together, give you green, we're a bit more accustomed. It kind of follows that structure. Cyan and magenta give you blue, and then all together give you black. In reality, all together usually give you like a muddy brown. Have you ever mixed a bunch of everything and you get like a kinky brown? But if you have exactly the same amounts of yellow, cyan, magenta, identical amounts of each, 100% of each all together, you end up with black. Even so, that black is not a very deep black. When you print a photo and you just have normal black, it's, if you ever want a deep, deep, deep black, you kind of have to add another spot color on top, or another layer of black to get a deeper black. But anyway, that's the way colors adjust. So whenever I say, what are you going to do with the image? I asked my son today with that image of the queen's face, or the rock that represented it, the profile of the queen. If you're going to print that in a brochure, it's gonna be different than if you're going to put it on a screen, because even the vocabulary, even the technical, not even the vocabulary, but the technical way that this image is going to be shown is going to be different if it's going to end up on a screen than if it's going to be printed. So in one case, we're going to be using CMYK or inks to represent it as a print. And in another case, we're going to be using light to show those colors. So for the most part, CMYK is going to be more muted. On screen, you've got light right behind your image. It's light. So you get all these bright, intense fluorescent pinks and intense reds and bright yellows and stuff that you just cannot imitate with CMYK. So you'll see a picture and you'll be really excited about that beautiful red flowers. And then when you see the print, it's like, okay, they're kind of muted red, right? That's because now I'm turning on the last one here. And we have the representation of the different color gamuts, which is what this is called. So this black outline here is showing me what's possible for CMYK to print. And notice that in some cases, it can even print a bit more than, it can show you something RGB can't show you. But for the most part, it seems less, right? The colors are less in the high, bright, intense spectrum. So if you see a photo and you've been working on it and practicing and color correcting it in RGB, and then you're so excited about it, you've shown it to your client, you're excited about it, and then you go print it and it's kind of like, oh, that's not as poppy as I thought it would be. Well, it's because it then translated into CMYK, things caught, certain colors. You wanted to see that, but it turned into that. You wanted to see that and it turned into that. So I'm going to show you what that looks like inside of Photoshop, but you wanted to see this bright pink and you got this little pink here. So there's a solution if you have money to add a spot color to that printing process. But for the most part, us normal people who just want a quick thing printed, we just need to work within the boundaries of CMYK. When I say normal people, like a home blown kind of process. But if you're really working for a product that there's money behind it to print it with more colors, you would ask for a special spot color. I'll tell you more about that so that you can imitate those tones that are not available to CMYK. RGB then shows you brightness. And then our eyes, look at how much our eyes can see. We can see even more than what RGB can reproduce. Okay, so we're going to really be able to look at something that's really intense. I have some great nasturtiums. Have you ever tried to photograph nasturtiums? I photograph nasturtiums in my garden, and the photos that I take, no matter how great my camera might be, it always feels as if they're just ultra saturated. There's like pure, orange everywhere, and you almost lose the details. It's because our eyes are seeing something and it's reaching the extreme ends of what RGB can do. And whenever you print them, they just look like, okay, orange flowers, but they just don't show you that brilliance of them. And I'm just saying that because I was just looking at some nasturtiums yesterday. They're dying without Santa Barbara, without water. It's time for them to go. We're saying goodbye to them. I know. And I was just thinking, oh, they're getting all muted. But that just reminded me how can see all these colors. Look at how much of blue light we can see that these colors cannot reproduce. And so usually the purple, magentas, and blues are something that are really hard to reproduce. Notice that the oranges and yellows, and this is better, but there's a lot of stuff that we see up there that we just cannot reproduce correctly. All right, so now you know how to do all of these modifying, turning on and off layers. Let me just show you one more thing you can do. Say that we want it, let's go back up here. Now we have two files, right? We have this one that's called untitled because we created a new file, right? This didn't exist before, so it has no name. And then over here we have the one called layer sample. So let's click on that. And now inside of Photoshop, we're opening both of our, we're checking out both of our files, both of them layered. There's one more thing we can do here with layers beyond stacking them in different orders, which is we can also reduce their opacity to see underneath. So let's take this top purple one and head over here to where we see opacity. So it says 100%. What if I click on this little arrow next to 100% and bring down this little slider? And we discover that I am going all the way down to 50%. And what I'm doing is I am seeing this become transparent. And I am seeing it at 50% opacity. So I'm seeing it half as bright as it used to be. So now I'm beginning to see what's underneath. If I were to turn all these off and do that to my background, it gets a little more complicated, because then what I start seeing behind it is this gray and white checkered thing. So it's kind of weird when you get your background to be the one that's losing its color, because then you do see something underneath, which is kind of complicated. So for the most part, we rarely would, either you don't have a background because you have full transparency, or you have it at 100%. But every other layer that we have here, we could be bringing down their transparency and seeing them, very little bit of them, barely any of them, or all of them at the same time. Now, remember, one thing that you need to be careful with, remember that I showed you how Command or Control 1 shows us an image at 100%. So let's go to 100% on this file. And we discover that when you see something at 100%, you're seeing it in this purple here. I still have it at 50%. So, when you see this image at 100%, in my case, it's filling my screen. For some of you guys, you might only see in a little portion of one of these leaves at 100%. So 100% of this image, which had many, many more pixels than the other image, is going to mean that there's stuff I'm not going to see. If I go to this image here and I go to 100%, Control or Command 1, it becomes really tiny. Versus on this one at 100%, it became humongous. Did that happen on your screen as well? That 100% meant really big on this one and really small on the other one?
Yes.
Control or Command plus. So in a way, I said I wouldn't be talking too much about resolution, but I kind of have to, because it's kind of what I was going to talk about today, although I'm segueing a little bit. Let's go back to Bridge and let's see what happened. Here we had this layers sample file, has 3,500 pixels width. The first number is the width, by 2,625 in height. That's how many pixels it has along the side and along the height and side edge, height and width and height actually. So when I instead look at any of these, they were all the same, and I click on one of these, so it doesn't matter which, because they were all the same. I only have 600 pixels by 591 as the total edge. So think about it. Let's just say 600, 611, but let's just say 600, right? So 600 pixels versus layer sample versus 3,500 pixels. So really, how many times will 600 pixels fit into 3,500? Approximately 6 times 5, 6 times 6 is about 3,600. right? Well, 36, but 3600. So that this image, okay, just right now, the native image could fit 6 times in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Does that make sense? So when we are in Photoshop, back to Photoshop, if we fill our screen, Control 0, Control or Command 0. Oh, this always happens to me when I use the wrong shortcut for VDI. Okay. I shouldn't have done that. Okay. And this happens, I messed up because now, yeah, now you're going to see them. I just changed, there's a shortcut that I use wrong because I get confused with Mac and PC. And now I'm seeing everything in a different resolution. It's looking so tiny that you won't see this well. I'll fix that. Anyway, so when I do Control or Command 0, it fills my screen. And when I go to the next file and I do Control or Command 0, it fills my screen. So it would seem almost like they're equivalent. That's why you need to look down here and look at the proportion, because at Control or Command 1, this is tiny. Oh. When Photoshop, when VDI does this to me, it drives me crazy. Come on, please resolve yourself. I need to wait it out. And let me stop my share for a second, because when the computer starts doing that. Okay, it's not really, sorry, my dogs are barking because someone arrived. I'm in the middle of my living room. But yeah, I'm having, come on, don't do that. Okay. Photoshop, VDI does that sometimes, where it starts being really weird with its resolution and it just crashed. So my VDI just crashed. So give me a second while I sign in again. When I click on these zooming in and out keys, it sometimes give me a second. All right. Come on. Ay, ay, ay. I'll get there. It usually manages to get fixed by the end of this, but I need to reset my computer settings. Okay, so here's the deal. I was trying to catch up the people who showed up at the beginning. Oh, and there you are asking me precisely to take a break, Natalia. And I forgot to give you guys a break. So let's take a break now. I fix this. Let's make it a short 10 minutes because I did spend a lot of time not with the material of the class today, trying to catch people up. So it's 7:09, be here by, so let's say 7:10, be here by 7:19. Okay, so be back by 7:19 p.m. Okay, and you can make all the noise you want because I'm going to mute everyone. There you go, you're all muted. There you go. Hey, sweetie. Can you check and see the person who just walked in? I think they left the door open, the gate open, which will let Tuga out, the little dot gate, the one that goes straight to Santi's room. So it's not necessarily the end of break time yet, but if anyone who's on VDI is around, I want to show you what's happening to me. Because since I had to sign out and sign in again, if you don't sign out of Google Drive and sign in again to Google Drive, you might end up with corrupted files. So since I need to fix that, I thought I'd actually show it to you. So I'm trying to open back the Photoshop files that I had before. So I'm going to share my screen, and this is just for VDI people. I'm trying to open up Photoshop, and so I'm getting the could not open because an expected end of file was encountered. This is because my Google Drive, my whole computer crashed, not my VDI crashed, right? So if you notice here in the bridge, I've got these like weird black lines and dark things happening. That's an example of VDI having crashed with Google Drive still connected. So remember I said that I was going to show you how to disconnect at the end of class. So what's happening is that I need to have disconnected from Google Drive and connected again. And I didn't do that because it all crashed. So when I try to open the files, I get this corrupted files. It's not that the files are corrupted. It's just that my connection has to be refreshed. So at the end of class, this is just for VDI people for a second here, since I'm going to do it, I figured I'd start the video to open up so you guys could see. We need to go, when I'm done with everything, before I close down, I have to go down here, choose my Google Drive icon. So you have to do this at the end of today. Go to the gears, preferences, go to the gears again and disconnect your account. Disconnect your account? Yes, disconnect. So what happens is that I am going to not have a connection to my Google Drive files anymore. And then I had to sign in with browser. That's great. After that, we have to close the files and sign out of Windows. I'll show you how to do that. But the most important thing is signing out of Google Drive. That way, when I sign in again to VDI, I have to once again sign in with a browser. So each time I need a fresh connection. And I'm going to do that now as if I had just selected, as if I had just opened my connection, and then my files now are fresh and uncorrupted, so to say. So I'm going to sign in again. So this has to be done even not only at the end of class and then at the beginning of next time you sign in again, but also if you happen to crash like I did, because otherwise the files won't be fresh and you'll get this message of corrupted files. Anyway, so I need to wait until the Google Drive appears in here in Bridge, and then I'll open the files again. So there it is, Google Drive's there. So now I can go straight here on the shortcut I made. I can just click straight on download class, and here I am in my files again. And bad news is it looks like they're still corrupted. Close Bridge because I hadn't closed Bridge, but I did refresh my Bridge again just to make sure it wasn't Bridge that's connecting wrong. Let's see, because if they're still corrupted. So this thing with VDI happens every now and then, where I get this problem with how things are displaying, and I had to have a bad feeling. I'm going to have to sign out of the whole thing again. Arg. This rarely happens. Of course, it's happening today on a day when I'm already run out of my. Okay, so I'm just going to do this again, but I'm going to have to disconnect actually from VDI. So I'm going to stop my share and disconnect from VDI. Well, while we're at it, I'll continue sharing because in the end, this is what you need to do. So say this is the end of class, you need to go in. So now I signed out of Google Drive. It says sign in with browser. I need to go in and actually turn off, go to power and turn off, like I'm shutting down my, oh, Brissa, you have that too? So you need to have, if you didn't do a fresh connection to Google Drive at the beginning of today, That's why it's happening. And then I have to disconnect actually from VDI, which is you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to avoid the possibility that this will happen again. And I'm actually open a different browser because I've had this. I'm going to close my browser and I'm just going to open with a different browser, which I normally don't use Safari for VDI, but the way this works when VDI on the same browser sometimes just remembers your last status and it just makes the assumption that you have the same connection and you need to refresh. So I have like 4 browsers. I'm just going to use Safari right now. This is why I cannot teach without having this. I mean, that's not true. I can teach. I have my own applications that I could be using. But the problem with that is that I will then end up not being able to show the people who are on VDI how to do all the file saving and stuff, which is kind of complicated. So I definitely need to. So Brissa, you know how I was just showing, I don't know if you were connected when I was showing how to disconnect from Google. So if you have that, every single time you start, you need to have a fresh connection to Google. So if you didn't disconnect at the end of last class, then you have to redisconnect now and reconnect again. All right, so this is going to take a little bit. I'm sorry for this distraction. I used the entire break sitting here to fix this. I did not do anything else, but little gnat just flew into my nose, not into my nose, fortunately, but onto my nose. Okay, so instead of boring you with a blue screen, let me bore you with my pristine face. Okay, so any what I was trying to say when all of this started going haywire is that by now everyone should be back. Yeah, I'm looking at the time. Everyone's back. So we had opened the files that had 3,500 pixels wide and the file that only has a total of 500 or I don't know, 600 pixels wide. And their inherent amount of pixels that they have right now is what, if we were to print those files, we're going to call resolution. If we're going to go on screen, the word resolution does not even come into the conversation. We don't care. It's the total amount of pixels that matters when we go to screen. So we care about the 500 number, about the 3,500 number. But when we go to print, we care about how many of those pixels fit in 1 inch. Okay, and 1 inch of printed material. So let me hold on because Google Drive is popping in. I'm talking about my connection here. Let's see if I get it to work this time. It's popping in. Sorry, I can usually multitask, but signing in and talking are 2 things that I can't completely do or I'll get the wrong. So a lot of you guys have taken my classes before and 2.5, God, I don't know how long it's been since I've been teaching online. This is truly one of the only, I used to have this problem Friday nights when people were not there to support us at school anymore, but it's been a while since I've had this problem, so I'm sorry about the time it's taking. Anyway, so I was just trying to explain that why 100% is different for the 2 different files. What I wanted to show you is if we were to bring, and I'm going to get there in a second, if I were to bring those, one of the little 500 pixel layers into the 3 green leaf or 3 colored green leaf layers, how that would end up being a tiny little image. Darn it, files are still showing up. Wow. This is a problem. I now have a different browser, different connection, and the files are still showing up. As problematic. Well, let me see. Because otherwise I'll have you guys close down Photoshop and we can continue with all the other 3 programs. I have no issue altering what I was going to do. Most of this time, usually it's Photoshop files that don't work. I'm trying to open the file in Photoshop now to see if I get that some error message. And if not, we'll move on to last week. We worked inside of InDesign for a little bit. So you guys are, I'm watching my screen. It's just that it's opening the file. And I believe it's going to let me. I'm crossing my fingers. Oh no, not that one. Almost there. I should be sharing, that way you guys would see what I'm basically. I'm just looking for the files. And okay. Yeah, it worked. And I have to recreate the demo tools. Photoshop, load files into Photoshop layers, and then let me share my screen. And here we go. Okay, so sometimes showing and sharing screen on Zoom takes a lot of the application power and energy. So that's why I just did all that outside of screen so that I could be back to here. All right, so and let me back in this work screen, which is the one that we use for this class, because I use different workspaces for different classes. Okay, so let's head over here. By here, I mean this file where we have the file that originally we knew was about 600 pixels. And I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to copy files from one side to another. But one of the simplest ones, which has a lot of negatives, but the big positive is most people know how to copy paste from their years on the computer from something else. So we can copy paste. So let's go ahead. Let me get my mouse on a little spotlight, red, blue cut. Okay, so most people know how to do a copy paste. So first of all, we would need to select what we're going to paste. We're going to copy, which is the entire background. So we can do a Command or Control A, or in this case, I can go to Select All, which as you can see is Control or Command A. Down here, you always see the shortcuts, what we're looking for. So do Select All, which just selects this entire, right now I have this layer selected, the demo color gamuts. So it's going to choose that one. If you have this one selected, it's going to copy that one. So depending on what you have selected, I'm going to go and select the top layer with my mouse, which becomes a bit lighter gray. And that gives me this whole thing. Now I'm going to do a copy, which is either Control or Command C, or for people who don't like shortcuts, you can go to Edit Copy right there. Once again, if you don't have me reminding you what the shortcuts are, always go to where you remember and know, and then notice that here it'll say Control or Command C. And then let's head over to the layers sample and do a paste, which is Control or Command V, or Edit Paste. See, there it is, Control V, paste. And here it is, files that we thought were similar is actually showing me how this is only 600 pixels brought into something that's 3,500 pixels big. And remember that we had read that already in Bridge. We saw how many pixels were in the original image. But when we do Control 0 and we see it feel on the screen, it's hard to understand how much bigger or smaller in pixels this image is. Now, why I'm bringing this up, first of all, give me a yes if you accomplish this correctly. Give me a no if you're having some issues with this. And you need a hand perchance with the process of copying and pasting or selecting all. But why this matters is the original conversation that I started you guys with, which is, what are you going to do with this file when you open it up? Do you need to open it up in Illustrator? Do you need to open it in Photoshop? Do you need to open it up in InDesign? What are you going to do with it? So that makes a difference. And so a quick little roundup of what I said the first few classes. In Illustrator will be for anything that's a vector image that you're going to mainly create from scratch, or you can bring in something that's been already photographed or scanned and then turn it into an illustration, or a photo which you're going to modify, either because you're just going to make it look more beautiful, more color correct, etc., or you're going to composite it like these images have been composited, and then put that material into InDesign, where we're going to create the layout for the brochure, the poster, the page, the book, the interactive PDF, whatever it is that we're creating. We're going to do that in InDesign and link all these files. But before we link all these files, we need to know if they're appropriate for that thing I'm creating. So if that project is going to be printed, I'm going to need a lot more pixels in my image for it to print well than if that final product is going to be on a screen. So if my final product is going to be social media, the way Maysan mentioned her image, it's going to be social media, or it's going to be only for the web, for my web page, or because sometimes, a lot of times, people who are artists in non-digital artists, you know, they're oil painters or sculptors, or whatever, need to get a reproduction of their image to then send to a show, to make a gallery online, or to some other reason like that. So anything that's going to project it on a screen or seen through a screen can have much smaller amounts of pixels. So this little guy, this little thing here, can show up at a pretty small size or big-ish size. It's 500 pixels wide, right? So it depends on the resolution of your screen. It could fill in your phone, it could fill in your iPad, or it could just be a small, depending on what you're going to create it with. But you'll never be able to print it. If you were to want to print this, it just doesn't have enough information. There's not enough pixels to do anything more than about a 2-inch file, because what we need is about 300 pixels per inch. So in the end, I'm kind of walking into it's hard to avoid. This is the time to talk about resolution with you guys. So this image had 600 pixels, we said, right, on its side. So what I need is for 300 of those pixels to exist in this image, for that to make 1 inch worth of a good photograph. So if this is a 4:6 image, right? And if this were an online image that I want to print into turning into this photo, I need to make sure that I have about 300 pixels and 300 pixels, and then here 300 pixels and 300 pixels and 300 pixels and 300. So if it's if this is a 4:6 image, then I'm going to want 300 pixels times 4, 1200 pixels on the side at least to fit. So this, if I divided 600 pixels into 300, I only get 2 inches out of it. So at most, this is going to print out as a 2x2. Does that make sense? If I wanted to make a little poster of this to put in my classroom or something like that, I just can't. I just don't have the material. That there are not enough pixels in that image to be able to print this. Versus if this is 3,500 pixels wide, right there, then someone with a calculator, how much is 3,500 divided by 300? Let's see, somebody out there, let me pick up my phone. 3,500, I see you have a question, Sarah, give me a second. 3,500 divided by 300 is 11 and a half inches wide. So this image here could print to be about 11 and a half inches wide by, I'm going to just guess here, about 8 or 7, right? So this is going to be about an 8.5 by 11. So this is probably going to be a sideways 8.5 by 11 letter size kind of image. But if I want to bring it like a big poster, 16 by 80, I can't, because that's as many pixels as I have, right? Sarah, your hand's been up for a while. Let you ask your question.
Okay, yeah, on the copy and paste, are you just copying and pasting one image over to the other file, or were you doing them all?
No, right now I only brought one.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's-
Yeah,
that's-
so I just got the top layer because
Okay.
it's the one that I had selected. But if you guys had selected the bottom one, you would have brought in the bottom one, or whichever it was that you had selected.
Okay.
So yeah, there's many ways of transferring files from one to another. That was the most basic, and in that case, you only can do one layer at a time. Okay, now let's do the opposite. Let's go to this file, select our purple layer. Okay, make sure that when I say select, that you can see how it changes color and this layer is selected. Now go do that select all or Command A. So I'm going to do Command or Control A or select all. Notice that when you do that, there's like, it's hard to see, but you see a little dotted line appears because I'm selecting the entire layer. Say Control or Command C. Remember, Control C if you're on a PC or on a Mac that's on VDI. And then head over here and let's do Control or Command V or paste, which is edit paste right there. And here is what happens when we bring in a very, now we know, big file into a little tiny one. And this isn't even 3,500. If you think about how big this purple thing is, probably about half as big as the whole thing, maybe a bit more than half. So that's what we're bringing in here. Okay, so basically we can obliterate the whole image. So one thing that this is showing you is that Photoshop, that window that we are seeing, is kind of like a mask. And what we call a mask in Photoshop is when everything that's around it that you don't see gets blocked out completely. So this is what we call the canvas in Photoshop. The space here that we're using in Photoshop is called a canvas. In Illustrator, it's going to be called an artboard. And InDesign is going to be called a page. But here it's called a canvas in Photoshop. And it's basically a page, right? But if the size of this page was 600 pixels by 600 pixels and I bring something bigger, the rest of it gets hidden. Okay, it's just not there. It's completely hiding in the background. Versus if you're an Illustrator or an InDesign, anything that doesn't fit, you can still see. And this whole area that shows up black here in InDesign and Illustrator is called the pasteboard. And you would still see the rest of this plant. Out here, you would just have 4 lines showing you what the size of the document would be. So I was having so many issues right now that I was trying not to open, but things seem to be working now. We can open something else. So anyway, this is the thing about resolution, that the pixels don't have a size as of themselves. They just have a number, but they can be bigger or smaller. So if I really want this image to fit into that size, I could just, you know, if I want to be able to print, this image in 2 by 2, then I can squish those pixels to fit more of them. So I can have more than 300 pixels per inch and still work. So this whole image could fit really well if I print it as a 2 by 2. But what won't work is if I want to print this one as an 8.5 by 11. Okay, so that we are going to talk about next week. We're going to spend much more time with resolution in a practical matter, how we change resolution and how we change file resolutions. But basically, when you're in Bridge, the first thing you need to know is, okay, I want to use this for a poster. Well, don't bother opening it until you go over here and look at all the metadata, and immediately that number alone is going to tell you, this is not going to work for that poster. I got to find another place. Why? Because of the amount of pixels, I know that I can't get more than 2 inches. But what's the problem is that over here, if I read where it says file name, document, it says file size dimensions 600 by 591. When I go one down, dimensions in inches, it says 8.5 by 8.2. And I go, oh, cool. This is gonna work. I can make it be 8.5 by 8, and all I wanted is 8 by 8. So this is great. I can print it. Can I trust that number? Got my eyelids. Can I trust that number? Innocently enough, I ask. Not that I'm giving away the answer. Never, ever, ever trust this dimension in inches. The only time this dimension in inches is going to matter is if I'm going to print. It doesn't matter if you're going online at all. But if I'm going to print, it does matter, and I cannot trust it unless the next step that says resolution is somewhere in between 250 and 300. No less than 250, 300 is ideal. If this says 72 PPI, that means that only 72 inches have been packed into, 72 pixels have been packed into that inch, pixels per inch. So 72 of those pixels packed into 1 inch is going to give me a blurry, fuzzy image. No good. So this is going to be an 8 by 8 image that's blurry and fuzzy and is a disaster. So if this number says 250 to 300 or higher, then I can trust that that's going to work. Okay. The program doesn't work in centimeters. Yes, it does. You can set your program to work in anything you understand. I am from Argentina, and of course I understand very accurately the whole entire metric system in centimeters. But when I came to this country, I had to learn inches, darn inches, that are absolutely senseless, but never mind. The whole point is that if you're going to work on your own for your own self, sure, you can use centimeters, but when you're going to be using, you know, vendors to print stuff and other clients and other designers, you're still going to have to learn inches. So believe it or not, if you're in this country, you're going to learn this country's ways. All right. So yes, but I'll show you now when we get into the applications, how you change it. So yeah, because these applications get used all over the world and they get used in whatever, you know, metric or imperial or whatever system gets needed to be used. All right. That said, there's still this constant, which is 300 PPI that gets used, pixels per inch. And I don't have right now what the number would be in centimeters. So there's some number that it would be pixels per centimeter, but the standard for printing is still PPI, even when we talk about centimeters. So that's interesting. I never thought about it that way. Anyway, so let's go ahead and give me a second here. I have to clear out some other windows that I have opened up. Here we go. So let's go ahead and see how this works in Illustrator. So let's go ahead and open, and we're not going to open an existing Illustrator file. We're just going to open the Illustrator program. And remember, I told you I'm going to try not to have all of them open at the same time. But if we can open right now Illustrator without starting with a file, last week we started with a file when we opened Illustrator. This time we can either go to the start button for VDI or PC people, and then here we find Adobe Illustrator, or go to the dock for those of you who are on a Mac, and let's open Illustrator. So last week we opened this Illustrator file and we were already working with existing material. This time we're going to open a blank file. And here's a method to my madness. So let's open this up. All right, so Saul is joining us right now. Saul is in this class, but he was in, long story, but he is in my Photoshop class. So he has done a lot of what we just did. And he's in my Illustrator class too. So he has done a lot of what we just did. But he liked those so much and he wanted to learn more. So I told him to come to this one, but I don't need to catch him up. I had some stuff open from before, so hold on. Okay, so here's where we opened up. So hi, Saul, how are you?
Good. How are you? Hi, everyone.
So Saul has pretty much a lot of what we've been going through, because my Illustrator and Photoshop classes are like 4 hours long, and he's been taking them for a few weeks. So he's got a lot of the stuff that we've been doing. I need you to, are you on VDI or on your own computer? That I don't remember.
On my own computer.
Okay, so then go ahead and open Illustrator, since that's what we just opened, and start on that. And did you download the class files perchance for this class yet? No.
I think not for this one, but for the Illustrator on Friday, yes.
Yeah,
Is
but
this
not
it?
for this one. So that's fine. You can use whatever image from that class to follow today's class. And then after that, go and download these class files, okay?
You got it.
But
Thank you.
when you go ahead and just open Illustrator right now, and you're fine. And
Okay.
Bridge and Illustrator, but Illustrator
it.
right now.
Okay.
All right. So, okay. So everyone has Illustrator open by now, I assume. And let me clear your answers so that I can have a chance for you guys to say no whenever something's not working. And so when we open a application without something, like when we open Photoshop, we already opened it from Bridge. We double clicked and it opened. So we never got to see this in, welcome screen, so to say. But all Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign have this welcome screen available when you open the program without an existing file opening it. And it sits there and asks you, well, what do you want to do? So over here, it's already giving me a couple of preset sizes of what I might want to do. Also, for those of you who like to learn on your own, over here, if you click on any of this, don't right now, but when you're not with me, it'll take you online to Adobe's page, and there's lots of little tutorials that are really good tutorials that you might want to also do on your own to keep progressing. But if I want all the options of the different presets and understand what's happening inside of it, which I do, let's all head down to the word create new. So last week we didn't create anything from scratch, and everything that we created, we opened last week was an existing file. So we haven't seen this window yet, but all three of these applications, when you say create new, or by the way, I think the Mac shows it to you up here. It says create new. Usually if I show something on the Mac and the PC, if it's here on the PC, it's here on the Mac. It's usually inverted up and down, down and up. Just consider the exact opposite place I'm showing it to you on one, it'll show on the other. We come to a window that's very similar in all three of them. And what this window is going to say is, well, basically the question I've been asking you, what are you going to create? What's your end product, right? Are you going to be creating something that's for mobile or web, something that's film or video, something for print, or something that's art and illustration? The reason you need to know this is because the file is going to be set either in CMYK or in RGB, depending on what you answer, right? So watch. If I click here on web, and I look here on the right side, it's giving me choices where the size come out in pixels. Because remember I told you on the web, all that matters is the amount of pixels that your image has. That's what matters, is pixels. So it's giving me something set in sizes of pixels. And when I scroll down a little bit more, notice that over here it says color mode RGB. Remember I just explained color modes, RGB, light. We're going to end up making something for web, so it's going to show me in RGB. On the other hand, let's say that I want to go to print. I click on print. Well, first of all, instead of pixels, it says points. Now, how many of you guys know what size a point is? Yeah, that's about what I expected. This size measurement is used by graphic designers and probably no one else, and letter set people from the eons and probably no one else in the world. So although it does have an equivalent measurement, let's just not complicate things. Click on the points here and head over to inches. And Brisa, this is where you can go into any other size that you want, but let's go for inches. And then notice that down here, it's telling me color mode CMYK, PPI 300. All the conversation we've just been having, like depending on what you set up here, the file is already getting ready to become a file that's going to work for you once you create that piece that you say you're going to create. Okay, so back from print to art and illustration is also going to be equivalent to print. It's going to try to go to the point. So I'm going to go back to inches again. And down here, it has a different answer though. It says RGB, right? So why does it say RGB and 72 PPI? Well, depending on what you're going to be bringing in an art and illustration, it's going to assume that you have, are you going to want to see the colors in, let's say, to the best of your ability of how you can see them in the screen? RGB looks much better than CMYK. And then your end product, once you're ready to send it to print, then you can convert to CMYK. And sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. You're going to have to ask your printer if the printer, I'm not like your machine printer that's sitting on the desk next to you, but the printer whom you send the files to, they're going to tell you, no, in my case, it's fine. We'll do the conversion here, or I have a digital printer that can handle one or the other. So you'll have to talk like to the printer, or if you're just looking at their website, find out what they say is the best setting. But some printers might still want RGB. Most of the times they're going to want CMYK. It'll depend on what kind of what kind of printing machine that they own, if they're going to prefer the files already converted to CMYK or not. Anyway, so as you can see, what you choose at the top makes a difference. Let's go ahead and start with the word print. Now, I don't want to go with a preset for letter. So I'm going to go over here again. Since I went back and forth, I'm going to have to choose inches again. And then let's choose a basic, let's go with 5 by 5. So I'm going to click in here and I'm going to change this to 5. And then if you want to take your mouse there, or you can just hit the tab key and that'll move tab 2 times to the next one. And then you just write the 5. Also, this is, remember how I said that in Photoshop, the page, so to say, is called a canvas. Well, in Illustrator, it's called an artboard. And in InDesign, it's called a page. So right now, there's only one artboard. Let's go ahead and just say that we want 3. So let's just go 1, 2, 3 and just get 3 artboards. Since I said 5 by 5, it doesn't matter if orientation is straight or landscape or portrait. So this won't matter because I chose a 5 by 5. We're going to ignore this information right now. We're going to spend a lot of time on this information once we get into InDesign, which I opened last week. So for now, let's just say that that's how I'm going to choose. And let's say create. I'm going to wait for a second in case there's any questions about this before I click my create. But if you have no questions, go ahead and click create. All right, so now I've created an Illustrator file with 3 artboards. Now, I went ahead and I believe we opened Illustrator and already created all our workspaces. But for those of you who are joining us today in Illustrator, that same window of workspaces that I showed you in Photoshop is up here. Click on that and also choose Essentials. And after you've chosen Essentials, go back up to it and say Reset Essentials. We want to do that each time, just because if you're in any, again, I'm going to give you an example. If I go into, say, printing and proofing, all of our, a lot of the windows change. See how what's available to me changes depending on what it is that I'm going to do. If I go into web, I get a whole nother bunch of stuff that's going to pop up in here. So anyway, we're going to work with the Essentials set of tools to start with. And I want everyone to be on the same set of tools. All right. Now these are blank layers. Nothing's happening in these layers. So we can either create something of our own, which we did we began working with rectangles and stuff last week, or I just want to continue with the conversation that we had here in Photoshop. in Photoshop, we had opened these files and this file and this one. And Saul, I know you have this one because I know we opened it in the Photoshop class the other day. So if you can open this one, which is called layer sample from your Photoshop class files in Photoshop, that way you'll have it. Well, you don't really need to open it. We're going to access it from Illustrator. But I know you don't have these other ones, so that's fine. We're going to use this one.
I already have the other ones. I download the files already.
You got them. You went and downloaded them. Okay, perfect. Thank you for being so on top of it. All right. So, so what we're going to do here is we're going to use Illustrator, not for creating something from scratch right now, which is what we normally do with Illustrator, but I want to show you how we're going to interact with files that come from somewhere else. And in this case, what I'm going to do right now, actually, what time is it? Yeah, because of the time, I'm running a little bit short on time today. So I was going to have us do something in InDesign, but I think I'm going to leave that for next week. Whenever I say next week, I always mean next class. It's just that some of my classes are weekly, some are twice a week, and my brain got to keep it straight. So next class. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to bring in a file from our Photoshop. So there's a couple of different ways I could do that. I could have opened from Bridge and told Bridge to open that file in Illustrator and stuff like that. But here I already have an existing space that I've created. And remember how I told you how when you do Control-1 or Control-0, what happens? So in this case, I'm going to do Control-0 or Command for Mac people, Command or Control-0. I'm going to do Control or Command-0. And suddenly what I'm seeing is only one window, because what it's done is taken me to the first artboard and it's made it fill the screen. So when you say fill the screen and you have 3 pages, it fills your screen with one of them. Okay, so right now we're seeing the artboard, and if I want to say Control- or Control+, I'll begin to see that the others were there. I've just kind of excluded them and gone up to this first one. Okay, so let's go a little bit smaller, Command- just so that we know, and here with the space bar held down, you can see that we can still move things around. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in here an image. And so how do we bring in an image that's not native to Illustrator? Because we're going to bring in a raster file or a photograph. We're going to go say File, Place. File, Place. Shortcut Shift Control Place. We're going to be placing it in InDesign, and the shortcut for that one is Command D. So the shortcuts for place are different in the different programs. Most of the programs have the same shortcuts, but certain ones don't. And in this case, they don't share the same shortcut. So File, Place. And so then it's saying, okay, so where are we placing this file from? You need to go find your class file. So those of you who are on Google Drive or on VDI, you have to click on the word Google Drive. Those of you who have the files downloaded onto your computer, go to wherever you have them downloaded onto your computer. If you put them in your downloads, if you move them to your documents folder, wherever you have them. I highly recommend never putting your files on your desktop. I can speak myself blue in the face about that, but don't put files on your desktop. Especially if you're on a Mac, it sucks up all of your computer power. Okay, so for those on VDI, go to Google Drive, and then here we're going to go to Shared Drives. And in Shared Drives, find your Digital Design Techniques Shared Drive. And then you'll see your download class files. Now, I've gone a little bit fast, but it's the same set of process. So basically up here, I said, go to Google Drive, Shared Drives, Digital Design Techniques Shared Drive, and then download class files. And once you are here, we're looking at the same files that Bridge was looking, only we're seeing them as file names, which is why it's so nice to have Bridge, right? Because you see the images instead of having these. Okay, so now that we're here, the file that we were working with is a PSD or layered file. It was called layers sample. Remember that? And the other file that we created, we never saved. It had 3 layers, but we never saved. But individually, they were these, the demo, color, wheel, gamut, and stuff like that, right? Because we had created as a 3-layered file, but we have them individually. So we know that this is going to be a pretty small file because we just did all that testing, right? So, and then we know this one's going to be pretty big. So let's first start with the really small one. So let's go over here to one of the demo ones. Remember that we're all exactly the same size. So I don't care which you start with. I'm going to choose demo color gamuts. And by the way, notice that I'm bringing in a layered file. PSD is a layered file. I could bring in a JPEG. I could bring in a TIFF. Any raster file could fit in here. So I'm going to bring demo color gamut. So I can either double click right here or I can select it and then click place at the bottom. And it's going to come in as something that's hanging onto the tip of my mouse. Okay. It hasn't shown up in my artboard. It's just showing as something hanging on from my mouse. Yes, Jean, you have a question? Can't hear you.
I was going to ask if you could do a file place from the bridge.
You can, well, Bridge is a place to start. Opening icon in Bridge, I can open it up and say place in Illustrator, but then it would open up as a new Illustrator file and it would place into this one file. So actually, I can't open. So let me show you. Let me go back here. If I were to come to, where is the demo? Here we are, demo, one of these. If I, first of all, if I double click, it'll automatically open in PSD, but I could right click and say open with Illustrator. Like I could do that. But then if I do that, it won't go into the file that I've already opened and set up with 3 pages and stuff like that. You know what I'm trying to say? And which is,
so we don't want to be doing a file place directly from the bridge.
no, we need to be in Illustrator and say file place from inside of Illustrator. We're going to go in, and this is the key word that I'm about to say. We're going to go and link this file to my Illustrator document. So I'm going to say file place, find the image that I want, and remember, let me remember again, one of these, and then say place. And so now it's sitting there waiting to be, for me to do something with it. Now, when I place files, and this is the same for Digital Design Techniques, sorry, for InDesign or for Illustrator, and it's similar to Photoshop. It's going to sit there, and what I do with my mouse is going to make a difference. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply click your mouse, put your mouse somewhere and just do a single click. Oh, I had brought 2, sorry, I had the other one from before, long story. So here's my file. I just simply clicked. I'm gonna control minus. What happened to that image? What happened to that neatly made artboard that I had created for it? My file exploded. It looks like it's humongous, right? But wait, we had seen that this was actually a really tiny image, hadn't we? You guys remember that in Bridge, we had gone here to this file. I believe the one I brought in is this one. And it was telling me that it was only 600 pixels wide. So then how can it be showing up so big? Because here in Illustrator, I made this be 5 by 5. Each one of these is a 5 by 5 piece of paper or artboard. So why is this showing up so big? Well, right now in Photoshop, consider that this is about 5 and this is a bit more. This is about showing up like 8 and something. If this is 10, then this is about 8 or so, right? Does that, what I'm saying, make sense? Let's go back to Bridge and see how in dimension and inches it's showing up as 8.5 by 2. The problem is that in Photoshop, this has been set as a 72 ppi file. So we know, because of what I just told you, that this is no good for printing, right? But does the file know? Does Illustrator know? No, the Illustrator just brought in the file that we brought in, and it is set up natively in Photoshop as an 8.5 by 8.5 at 72 ppi. So Illustrator brings it in as an 8.5 by 8.5 file. So if we don't know about all of this that we're talking about, and you bring in a file, it's completely inappropriate for printing at 5 by 5. We discovered that this really couldn't be any bigger than 2 by 2 if it were printed, remember? But Illustrator doesn't know that, and I don't know that. I print this in here, I make it maybe 5 by 5, I go print it, and then I wonder, how come my image is so fuzzy and icky? It's because I need to pay attention to all the stuff that's happening in the background. Okay, so when we just single clicked, the image comes in at whatever size it's set up as a file. In this case, it came in as an 8.5 by 8 kind of image. Let's go ahead and hit the delete key to get rid of it. Go back to Bridge, confirm that, yeah, that's not going to work. I know that this is not going to work. I need to change this in Photoshop. We're going to do more of this work next week in Photoshop, okay? To change it to be actually at the right size for it to come in at the best it can be, which would have been 2 by 2, right? But at this point, we don't have the time to do that. But let's go ahead and see what other way we can bring in the file, because guess what? Maybe we did know that. So how can we bring in this image and have it be at the right space? So let's go again to File, Place, bring the same image in. And again, I don't remember which of these, I think it's this one that I've been using the demo. Say Place again, but this time, instead of simply clicking, which is then going to go to its big old 8 by 8, I can click and drag. And when I click and drag, I can decide what size I want it. So let me make it really tiny, about yay big. If I know that this is 5 inches, right? I know that my artboard is 5 inches. I'll know this is about 2.5. So I'm kind of guessing it, but I'll know that this is about 2 right now. And I let go. And then I have decided what size it's going to come in at, instead of letting the whole thing come in at whatever size it wants to come in. Does that make sense? I have brought it in. Actually, it's probably less than, it's probably 1.5. Yeah, over here it's telling me I brought it in as a 1.5 by 1.5. So Elias, what's your question?
Yeah, there is any, can you do shift and shrink it down or not? Or it's better doing it this way?
We can, yeah. So what you're saying is, had we brought it the first time,
Yes.
so let me bring it in again. I'm going to bring the different one in so that we know that I'm talking about a different image. Had I just clicked and brought it in this big, so he's asking, can we just shrink it? Yeah. So you've worked with Illustrator before. This group hasn't really worked too much with Illustrator on images before. He's had many hours under his belt in the Illustrator class already. But yes, if you grab these little corners and hold down the Shift key at the same time and drag in, then we could have made this be smaller or bigger. So yeah, that's a given. I just don't have that completely explained in this class yet, but you can. That said, notice over here in the properties. So if you don't have the properties panel available, maybe you have libraries or layers, click on the properties panel here. And notice that at the very top, it says transform. And if I look at not the X and Y, but these numbers, WH, width and height, it's telling me right now what width and height this image is. So I can go ahead and hold down one corner, any corner, holding down the Shift key and make it bigger or smaller until I get it to be about 2 by 2 or whatever it is that we wanted it to be, right? Now, so go ahead and watch what I'm going to show you. And then we're going to, this that I'm showing you right now is exactly the same for InDesign or Illustrator. So Photoshop is one creature, works with raster files. Illustrator and InDesign are much more similar to each other. So whenever I'm showing you something in Illustrator, 99% of the times it's identical to InDesign. That gives you a big step up in the learning curve for when we open InDesign. but there are very specific things to InDesign as well, okay? But just let me say that this portion, everything I'm about to show you right now, is identical in one or the other. Now, here's the thing that I wanted to show you. These files have been linked to this document. So I have not embedded them. And this is going to be a very big concept for us, for Illustrator and InDesign, linked versus embedded. Let me go ahead and let's open the window for links. So let's go, put, whenever we don't see what we need in here, like if I'm looking for the links window and I'm not seeing it. So you can go to the word window and look for the word links. And let's pop up the links panel. So this essentials panel that's coming up with the beginning Illustrator is pretty reduced. And so there's stuff that it doesn't have. I'm trying to teach. It's a new reduced version of Windows that opens up with Illustrator now, but it's missing a lot of stuff. But one of the things that I want us to see is these links. Okay, so this thing opens up and notice what it's telling me. Does it look like this for all of you guys? Because if it doesn't, if you see only this little bit, you can make this window a bit bigger. You can click on the file. I have two files open here, so I have both of these, but I have to click on this little arrow to open it up bigger. And I don't know if you have this one open automatically or not. In case you don't, click on that little arrow to read all this stuff. So we get, again, what do we find here? What's this all called? We saw it in Bridge. It's the metadata, right? It's a bunch of information about this file. And so I can click on these two that I brought in, and guess what it's telling me? It's telling me, first of all, this is a linked file. It actually said linked file over here too. It's telling me the color space that image is in, and this was in CMYK. That's the original color image. The location is telling me where it found it. It's telling me a PPI. Wait, that's different from the one that we had. And why is that? Because when it first came in, it was so huge. It came in about yay big. It was at about 74 PPI. By reducing it in size, we have made it be about 300 PPI. I'm gonna make it, we can make it a little bit bigger for it to get to that magic number of 300 PPI. There we go. So that is exactly what's good for it to be in printable size versus this one, the way it came in, it was humongous and it was at 74 PPI. So this window is telling us a lot. It's telling me this is going to print out great. This is going to be a disaster if it prints out. And the most important thing that I want to teach you about this is that the fact that it says linked file. So the difference between a linked file and an embedded file, we're going to explore much more on Thursday. But all I want to say right now is that these files can't exist on their own. This now has to be constantly paired with these. So if I send this to file to anyone, I have to send three files. I have to send the Illustrator plus this file plus this file, because
where do we go to see that window?
Okay, go to Window, Links.
Thank you.
Window Links. And then you find this little links panel that's floating around. So we're going to explore this much more. We can go ahead and not save this. This took 2 seconds to make. We're going to make it again with a different file that we're actually going to be working with. And we're going to do this exact work that we just did here. We're actually going to work inside of InDesign on Thursday so that you can see that it's identical to what we showed. And then we're going to start creating a file with photos that we bring in from Photoshop, and we're starting to create in a product. But I wanted to show you how this file now has two different files in it. And I am going to really quickly, just to show you this before we are done, I could embed this file. There's many different ways of embedding it, but one choice here in the properties is to embed it. So I'm going to embed this one. And all it took was saying embed. It's going to tell me how to import it. It's going to, let's just go ahead and say okay without caring what it's doing. And it's going to embed it. And I hope I don't crash. It's taking a second. Okay. All right. So now this has been embedded. If I look over here for information for the file, it has none. See this? It's not a separate file anymore. Now it's just a graphic inside of Illustrator that is a raster graphic. And this right now is going to be treated inside of Illustrator and not as a separate file versus this one. If I click on it, it's still linked to its original file. This concept, we're going to explore much more tomorrow and see which one is better. Why do you choose one? When do you choose another? But linked and embedded is something you really need to understand. I'm not going to have you do this because I just wanted to show you that the lack of metadata. This is now just a little object inside of Illustrator. It doesn't matter where it came from. We're going to talk about this. I want us to close the files. It's 8:18. Class has been over for 3 minutes. I know some of you guys need to go. And I'm trying to catch up for a lot of what I kind of didn't get to fit into today. But what I want us to do now is to close this file. For Mac people, the X is on this side. For PC, it's on this side. Close the file. Do you want to save changes? Say no. You're not going to bother saving this. Right now, it was just a matter of understanding and learning about what happens when you bring in a file within the whole conversation, a resolution. And then we can close the Illustrator program. We're going to do the same with Photoshop and go into Photoshop and we can close these files. Again, we didn't do anything special. We just brought in a file, but if you guys want to save them just because you want to, if you're on the PC on your own computer, you can do it. If you're on VDI, we're going to have to create a whole new save in a shared drive. So we're going to reserve that for tomorrow in a save drive. So we'll say no, don't save the changes. Don't save the changes. And then close Photoshop. And then close Bridge. Now, the reason I'm being so specific, especially on VDI, is because of the issue of corrupted files. So now we're going to open up this little arrow, go to Google Drive, click on this little gear, and choose Preferences. I know I might left some of you guys behind, so I'm going to show you this again. Go to this little bottom arrow and open up your Google Drive. And then this Preferences, this link, and Preferences. And then here we're going to go again to the same gears and disconnect your account. And then disconnect from here again. So now that you've disconnected from that, you can have a clean connection next week, and then it'll default to saying sign in as browser, which is good. You don't need to do that. Now let's go over to the start and go to the power icon and click on power. And then you get the choice to sleep, shut down, or restart. And we're going to shut down. It's like we're shutting down, we're leaving the school, right? So we're shutting down our school computer. And after it's done shutting down, then we're going to leave VDI. So it's basically sign out from Google Drive, shut down your computer. And then once you get to VDI, you go up to here to the top layer and choose your final icon way over there and say log out. Log out, you want to log out and say, okay, cool. So now you're done. And for those of you who are going to keep using VDI for quite a while, I recommend checking here so that next time when you sign in, you go straight in without having to put in all your password and all of that, just as a reminder. Okay. I just wanted to show that whole process. For VDI people, that's the correct way to shut down. And then next week when you sign in, or in this case, tomorrow when you're practicing, I completely forgot to have you guys do any screenshots today, but it's not like we did today. We did a lot of learning, mental learning more than doing. So I guess that's okay. But I wanted to have you guys, if any of you remember to take a screenshot, to post it in Padlet, but if not, it's okay. We're going to be doing stuff on Thursday with all of this that we learned. Those of you guys who still need to read the resolution, please read it. And now you'll go, oh, that's what she meant today. And then we'll keep working on Thursday with the concept, but we're actually going to begin creating a file that we are going to save. And then you'll have stuff to screenshot and put on the Padlet. Maysan, I saw that you sent me that file, so I'm gonna download it and see if I can incorporate it into our work. All right.
Okay, sure, okay.
And anyone who wants to put anything in Padlet that you're working on or doing or questions, Saul, I sent him to this class actually because in both Photoshop and Illustrator, he's posting all these files to our Padlets and those classes where he's creating a lot of stuff that is well worked in here. He's doing a lot of posters and brochures. I mean, website. I'm trying to remember. You put a lot of different stuff up there that you're working with. Let me see if I can. Well, I don't have them handy right now. Let me go for a second to our Padlets for Illustrator and Photoshop. Anyway, and so I'm trying to remember. I'm looking at it right now, actually. So I'm just sharing with you guys for a second. This is the Padlet for my Photoshop class. And trying to remember the stuff that you had posted here. So here he's working on, he showed me he's working on business cards. And then in the Illustrator Padlet, you had also posted working on, well, you had posted something here. What had you posted? It this, which is the whole catalog that he's working on. Okay, for concrete and masonry, and he wants to work on stuff for his business, stuff like that. So for a whole catalog, right? Like he's got here going, or for business cards or paperwork for his business. It's fine to learn the individual programs. He's in the right place, but I sent him to come to this class because how to create all these things. In the end, you need to have a combination of all these three programs. So Saul, if you can post a few of these things that you posted in there to our Digital Design Techniques Padlet, that would be great. And let me give you the link again, because they're much more appropriate for this class. Let me post it in here. That said, Saul, can you send me a quick reminder? Because since you just joined this, have you been getting the emails with the links for this class? No, you haven't, because you just joined us, and so you're not in the list, in the roster.
Exactly.
Yeah, so there's the link. Go ahead and copy it now, and then send me a quick email. Remind me to send you the Digital Design Techniques links and stuff so that I can send you the Padlet and well, you already have the files, mainly the Padlet.
Yeah.
Okay, you know the rest is the same.
All
All right, guys. So do some studying up on resolution, check out the handouts, play around a little bit. If you have anything to post, please post it to show me other stuff you're up to. I didn't get a chance to catch up with Glinda or Sarah or Saina. If you're doing something of your own, then post some stuff to Padlet to show me what it is that you're up to. And if you're doing nothing, you're just wanting to learn, then you're fine. Answer the surveys so that I can have an idea of where you're at and what your interests are, which I kind of know the rest of the class. Okay. I'll see you on Thursday.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you and good night, all of it.
Bye, Saul. Bye, everyone.
Bye.